I'm not that knee jerk. I just think it was a bad day, and time will tell if the draft was a good day. I liked the way they drafted, so we'll see how his offseason goes. We have some ticket texts, and we'd like your phone calls too at 248-539-9797. If Avila was Millen 2.0, is Harris on his way to being Bob Quinn 2.0? Showed his hand and fumbled. That's Eric in Wyandotte. Well, there's a little of the Bob Quinn where he said Stafford's our quarterback.
Well, the reason why I brought up what I did for the update about the way the questions are asked to these guys is if Erod changed his mind or the Dodgers at the last minute put in, hey, you have to opt in as part of it.
Yeah.
To me, it lets Harris off the hook.
Oh, yes.
He took the high road last night. I give him credit for that in terms of not throwing Erod under the bus. But I do think unanswered questions here are doing him no favors, and that maybe Erod owes it to him for at least to answer right. Now, I do think Erod could answer the questions to damage Harris even more.
Yes.
I don't have a problem. You can be critical of it, but I don't think it's like Quinn-esque to if they agreed to the deal without asking him and apply pressure to make the deal, because that happens a lot. Didn't Scherzer wait?
Yeah.
On the weekend?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
he waited till before he wanted to waive. He wanted to think it out.
Right, and then the Mets told him that we're not really going to be competitive till 2025, 26, and that's when he said, all right, get me the hell out of here. Trade deadline, a huge disappointment. Does Scott Harris think he is Bob Quinn? The smartest man in the room. He screwed us over. I'm okay with how it all went down. We are a better team with Erod on the roster than we are with a prospect that may or may not turn out. And I predict Erod gets a new contract, pitches well here for 3 to 4 years, and that's from Chris in Houston, not Chris Houston.
Well, I think the question is going to be, does he really need a new contract? Is he going to opt out? And if he does, is there going to be a bidding war amongst other teams? I don't want the Tigers to get into a bidding war to keep Erod. And is what happened last year and his, sabbatical from the team for whatever reason, and now this, if we do find out, I think amongst baseball circles, whether we do or not, they will know what happened in the final minutes and why this deal fell apart. If it is Erod, how attractive is he going to be for other teams? Yeah, he's a left-handed arm. He's pitched good. He pitched really good at the beginning of the year, but he's kind of getting back to where his norm is.
Correct.
How attractive will he be to other franchises, as Scott Harris likes to say, markets?
Yeah.
When I talk about like how this all went down, and let's say if to me for Harris, what I was saying about him consummating the trade and everybody knows, and you try to put pressure on Erod, is that good business when it's a team that's on your no trade list?
No, that's why the question is why even go that route anyways. He had to.
That makes you think he changed his mind.
Yes.
Or something happened
right.
within
That's
the
what
deal.
I said earlier in the show. You read through the tea leaves. I think what happened was they had a deal in place, and for whatever reason, Erod got skittish a little bit and said no. That's what I think happened. But I have there's no idea whether I'm right or wrong. Some more ticket text. Glad Harris walked away rather than taking a low ball and becomes viewed as a league doormat. There's some validity to that. I don't believe in it, but I understand it. To me, that you could have gotten at least one decent prospect, and then you never know about prospects. It's better than if he walks away as a free agent and you get nothing. That would be a disaster.
The sad thing about this for me is that you were dealing with the Dodgers, who have a good farm system.
Yes.
So the odds of hitting, you don't know about prospects, but I think the odds increase that you get a guy that actually plays in the majors.
Mm-hmm. I blame Rodriguez on this one. After reading a couple articles, Harris was talking with him and his agent, and Rodriguez was willing to be traded to the Dodgers. Then in the last hour, he said no. Another article said it was his wife that didn't want to go to L.A. This is all on Rodriguez for not saying no earlier in the process. Maybe if Harris hired a GM, he could have had a second phone working a backup deal. He waited until the last minute and got skunked. Joe in St. Clair Shores. Well, I don't know how the exact organizational breakdown, but whether he has assistants to him that I'm sure were on the phones as well. They didn't have the title as GM. He's calling the shots. Could Erod be vindictive to the Tigers over his pay suspension last year? I don't think so. I thought the Tigers, they didn't pay him because he didn't tell them where they were. They went through at least, 3 to 4 weeks where nobody knew where he was. And then finally he got a hold of AJ.
Yeah.
So,
that's why, it's his agent. And again, there's another component in here. Did his agent tell, Scott Harris and the LA GM that, I get this, I can get Erod to agree to this. That's another component. But he's also got to look out for the best interest of his client. And the best interest of his client, he may say, you need to opt in because there's not going to be any more money in the market with what happened last year, with what happened at the end of the trade deadline here. You need to opt in for the remainder of this contract.
Rodriguez was a must move. We could have signed him back next year if he wanted him that bad. This is a huge failure. I think it's an L. As we always talk about, the kids put up the L, whatever. This is an L in Scott Harris's column because he's in charge. And if you want to even go one step further, it's an L in Chris Ilitch's too because he's the owner of the team. But yes, the president of the team and pseudo general manager, because he basically is the general manager without the title, it's on him. It's that simple. There are reasons why it didn't occur that were probably some of them out of his control, but he's got to take the hit for it. And Eduardo Rodriguez is interesting because we're getting a lot of, conflicting opinions. There are people who love the fact that, hey, he loves it here in Detroit. That's great because a lot of, athletes don't. And you have others who are basically saying, who wants a guy that won't pitch for a World Series possibility in a place he doesn't want to be for, and they're only going to be there for 2 months.
But he put that in his contract that he didn't want to play there.
Exactly, yeah. I know.
Okay, so
and knowing that LA, so when he came here, the Dodgers were already a really good team.
Yeah.
It's not like they've just come on in the last year or this year's a one-off. Right. They were a good team, and he put that in there at that time.
Yeah. I don't know. I was reading somewhere that I think some of these contracts, these guys can change their team lists like before every offseason.
Those are things that we just don't know.
Yeah, I know. I'm just saying, yes, there's no doubt that the Dodgers. And the other interesting thing is, suppose, this didn't get leaked out. Would that have been worse in your mind?
That it would have
there was
been.
No trade.
We were wondering, did they make the call?
Yeah, exactly.
That's all we want to know. Did they make the call? Well, now we know.
Yes.
They did make the call. They had been working on it, and it didn't work out.
They made the call. They obviously called the wrong number.
The Dodgers wanted out there that this failed in some ways. Does it make them – because then it shows at least they tried to make a trade.
Right, and the Dodgers are getting ripped by Bill Plaschke wrote a column just ripping the Dodgers, not just for this, but for their – trading
no
trade deadline
plan that they
day
had either.
Yeah, exactly, because they wanted Verlander.
But I think everything changed when Scherzer got traded. That's when you recognize, all right, if we're going to trade him, we better get on it now and not wait to the deadline because the market was going to dry up. I mean, you combine a drying up market with a no trade clause, and all of a sudden your options are short.
I don't think anybody expected Scherzer or Verlander, or the Mets, I should say, to pay as much of their contracts as they're paying either. I mean, say what you want to, people always say, I wish we had an owner who would spend. Well, Steve Cohen, spend, and where are they?
Yeah, no better than where we are.
Right, and what they wanted to do was replenish their farm system, which they did because the guys that they spent a lot of money on, older pitchers, and Erod's not in that, age category. Didn't work out. I mean, Verlander's pitched pretty well towards the end. It's not been a great year for Scherzer. Here's the other question about Verlander. Now that he's back with Houston, it's still 13 years here, 5 years Houston. Does the Detroit hat?
If he wins another World Series out there, is he going to wear the Houston Astros cap?
Yeah. The Detroit, the D come off the plaque now.
Maybe the Lions could trade Taylor Decker to Houston, and then they could get Justin Verlander back.
That's a possibility. I mean, he's always on the market.
97 won the ticket.
Hey, you've heard me talk about injury attorney David Feminino, and I've told you when you get injured in Michigan, you get David and you get paid. Well, David has informed me that there has been a recent change in the law that allows victims of slips or trips and falls to recover. So here is what you need to know. If you have been injured in a slip or trip and fall within the last 3 years, you may be able to recover financially for your injuries, but you must act quickly to preserve your rights. So if you or someone you know has been injured, you need to tell them to call David Femininio at 855-65-CRASH or go to his website, getdavidgetpaid.com. That's 855-65-CRASH, getdavidgetpaid.com.
248-539-9797. Some more ticket texts on Erod situation. Look at Lynn Henning's tweet. Said Erod accepted, then changed his mind. All right, let's look at Lynn Henning's tweet. He says, this is 13 hours ago, Eduardo Rodriguez had, in fact, agreed to the Tigers trade with L.A. Things changed. We'll only submit that this follows by a year of Eduardo Rodriguez's departure from the team to sort out serious marital issues. Can easily imagine a spouse saying, quote, I'm not going to L.A. You're speculating on that part of it, but Lynn has been a baseball guy. Has followed this team for a long time. If he says that Eduardo did agree to the trade, I see no reason why he would be wrong about that. And if that isn't, if we do find out that's the case, maybe Rodriguez admits to that today after his game against the Pirates. And, you know, apologies maybe to Scott Harris, but I still think, depending on when that happened, you should have try to have some kind of plan B, backup. Stoney, you are wrong. If someone is good at first and changes, that is on the player, plain and simple. Check out the other no trade clause. Can't trade to someone that won't buy. I won't blame him for going big and failing. Better than getting someone's 15th best player. I don't know. I think you always have that. All right, after with an hour left, if that's when they found out, yeah, you go to Baltimore, you go to Cincinnati, you go to whoever, say, look, what are you giving me? And you take it. And maybe you believe in your player development, and they get better.
Well, you also got to somewhat believe in the player that you're getting.
That's what I'm talking about. We somewhat believe, but if you're giving up, if you're letting a guy go, you're not going to get anything. My point is, something is better than nothing. I think it's basic math. It's basic life. I don't think Scott here has fully understood the frustration of baseball fans in this town. However, he's going to find out real quick. Okay? I don't think that's relevant, actually. He's got to do his job.
Yeah. Whether the fans agree with it or not, what we want is results.
Right. Exactly. Harris made it pretty clear he's not going to answer those personal questions, nor should he. He's protecting his player. Erod should definitely be asked, though. Just my opinion, the Tigers didn't pay Erod last year when he was out. So did he accept the deal and then said, you screwed me, now I'm screwing you? That's from Tim.
Who made the choice not to pay him ultimately? Was it our good old friend? Good old Uncle Al?
I don't know. Or that was
I wonder
Chris.
who made that decision. I mean, if it could have been ownership, and I don't blame him.
Right.
I mean, but I'm just kind of curious.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be funny if it was
This is all on Scott Harris. This is not on Erod. Scott Harris thought he was the smartest guy in the room. All he wanted was the big haul from the Dodgers. I don't think he did anything with anyone else. It blew up in his face because he thought he could convince Erod to waive his no trade, which he didn't. We used to have SOL for same old Lions. Now we have SOT. Same old Tigers. Worst organization from ownership on down. Thanks, gentlemen. Love your show. Like we can only speculate. We can only guess. We all agree there should have been some sort of backup plan. But, yeah, he wanted a big haul from the Dodgers, and I think he should have wanted a big haul from the Dodgers. And that's not why the trade went down, though. The trade went down because Erod probably changed his mind, in my opinion. Harris is protecting Erod and the possibility of the Tigers salvaging something out of the situation. It might not make for good radio, but Harris owes nothing to those asking questions. He does owe the Tigers his best effort in managing this problem handed to him by Avila and Erod. Yeah, I tend to agree with that. Let's go to Frank. You're a 97 on the ticket.
Thank you for taking my call.
Mm-hmm.
As you can tell, the way I talk, I'm originally from Boston. I lived there for 60 years. And I'm talking about Erod. Erod, when he pitched for Boston, Alex Cora treated him like a son. And many times he would be sulking in the dugout, and Big Papi would often talk to him. He had emotional problems. And then when he came to Detroit, his marital problems really got bad. And when he went back to Boston, he's not going to re-sign with the Tigers. You mark my words. I'm telling you right now, you can mark this down. You're going to see next year he's going to be pitching for the Red Sox again. His family needs him.
It wouldn't surprise me. I don't know if they're still living in Boston or they're in Miami where he lives in the offseason. I don't know that, but no, that would not surprise me. I love the fact that on social media, Frank, we got to see a picture of Puig hitting a home run off Rodriguez in the World Series. So maybe he just didn't want to go back to the haunted Chavez Ravine. Let's take one more. Ed in Ann Arbor, what's up?
Hey, Stoney, we need to pull the rhetoric down, man. Because the truth is, this is this guy's first spin around the pond, and he didn't leave the Tigers in any bad shape. The truth is, Rodriguez is a good pitcher. The decision was his. That's why they arbitrate contracts. The other thing is, they know exactly what he's worth now and what the market is worth for him. So when they get ready to deal with him at the end of the season, they're in prime position to keep the guy because he can pitch.
Let me ask you this question, Ed, though. Who do you blame here? I mean, you talk about, yes, Rodriguez had the contract, so why are you negotiating a trade with a team that your player doesn't even want to go to?
Well, at some point in time, I know the general manager's not stupid. Rodriguez had to say yes at some point in time. He changed his mind.
Right. That's what I think. That's what I think happened.
Yeah, so everybody shouldn't be buttsore with the general manager. He's just an accident waiting to happen in this situation.
All right.
Super quick question. You got Heather. Is it all spilt milk if he doesn't opt out?
No, I don't think so.
Why?
Because
he's here for 3 years and he's a good pitcher.
We'll see how good he is. I trust the Dodgers prospects more than I trust Eduardo Rodriguez.
So you trust what might be in the development as to what you've seen.
Yep. Now that could change.
I'm surprised at that.
Yeah.
I do think he's having a
career year.
Yeah, but I still think he would bring something to this team in terms of just stabilizing the staff.
And you view him as if next year he's not your number one, even your number two, but he's your number three. You'd rather have a prospect that may never make the major leagues versus what you have.
More than one. I would have gotten more than one, I'm sure. I'm sure it just wasn't just one prospect.
But if he stays and he's here 3 more years, and I would say, let's say, performs at a 2 and or 3 occasionally on the seasons. To me, it's not so bad.
It's not horrible.
It's just, I don't know, maybe the likelihood of him staying is actually reasonable.
Could be. We'll find out soon enough. That's for damn sure. Here's Heather with news.
Well, a man who was out for a stroll with his dog over the weekend in Detroit was robbed at gunpoint and had his French bulldog stolen. Police believe that the man was most likely targeted because of the kind of dog that he had. And it was not only a French bulldog, which is a designer dog, it was this Merle French bulldog. So it had this beautiful different color coat. Okay. It's the color of its fur, really, that makes it even more rare. And they say these dogs can be extremely expensive. They can go for maybe up to $5,000 or even more than $10,000. So after this guy was approached at gunpoint, not only did they steal his dog, they also demanded the man's wallet and his phone. The victim was able to run back towards his home. He actually got a gun and fired several shots at the suspects, but they managed to get away and take the dog. Overall, this does have a happy ending because police were able to locate the dog unharmed, and the suspect was taken into custody. A Wayne County couple freaked out when they realized they had won more than $288,000 playing the lottery. So the couple bought a winning Fantasy 5 ticket at a 7-Eleven in Garden City, and they say they really rarely play the lottery, but the wife had received several lottery tickets for her birthday. So they took the tickets into the store to redeem their winnings. And while they were there redeeming what she won for her birthday, they saw, you know what, the jackpot for the Fantasy 5 was getting pretty high. So they said, let's use what we won and buy several of these Fantasy 5 tickets. They did a bunch of easy picks. And when they checked their tickets, they couldn't believe that they had won such a huge jackpot. And they plan to invest the money into their retirement savings. So good for them. An Iowa State quarterback, Hunter Deckers, has been charged with tampering with records after he is accused of betting on Iowa State sports, including one played by his own team. So according to this criminal complaint, he engaged in this big scheme basically to disguise his identity and then manipulate these online transactions in order to create the appearance that these transactions were made by a family member and not by him. And he allegedly made about 300 wagers while he was underage, and 26 of those were placed on Iowa State University sporting events, including one on this 2021 Iowa State football game against Oklahoma State, which he was a backup quarterback at the time of that bet. So if all these accusations are true, he would be facing a permanent loss of NCAA eligibility. More betting in sports controversy.
As he should.
Yeah.
You bet on a game you're participating in or your team is. That is a no-no. Hey, it's all under the great Matt Campbell's watch, though, right?
Come on.
I'm just kidding. All right. Thank you very much, Heather.
Yep.
Coming up next, Wednesdays with Wojo, 97 on the ticket.
Ken Rosenthal tweeted or wrote a story for The Athletic saying the pressure on buyers is mounting. But we got our new guy in charge.
Let's not celebrate.
Sorry.
Yeah, let's learn who this
Wrong
guy
sport.
is first.
Wrong sport.
And wrong nation. This is not a Russian player. The Tigers have traded Michael Lorenzen by himself, no package, no sweetener.
So Scott Harris was doing something.
He doing something.
Okay,
Well,
just check.
Let's see if it's something
Just
good.
wait till we get what he got.
Lorenzen. Let's not celebrate.
Sorry.
Yeah, let's learn who this
Wrong
guy
sport.
is first.
Wrong sport.
And wrong nation. This is not a Russian player. The Tigers have traded Michael Lorenzen by himself, no package, no sweetener.
So Scott Harris was doing something.
He doing something.
Okay,
Well,
just check.
Let's see if it's something
Just
good.
wait till we get what he got.
Lorenzen to the Phillies by himself, no sweetener, no package. 1-for-1. Is this 1-for-1, David?
That's what it looks like.
And it's a second baseman from the Phillies, their farm system. He's not a top 100 player. He's number 5 in their system, a 20-year-old. Hao Yu Lee. He's a Taiwanese second baseman. Your reaction?
Well, looking at it, looks like he won't. He's projected to be at the big ball club now in 2 years, 2025. So
Yep.
he can play 3 positions in the infield. I mean,
He's in high A ball, hitting 283 right now, on base 372. We like on base. That's the whole thing here. Look, I didn't think you're getting a top 100 prospect for Lorenzen straight up, so I'm not going to sit here and like, well, this is a terrible
Making
return.
sandwiches. We should have played this yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
Fine, I
Because
guess. He's a
yesterday we
young
talked
player,
about the
international
survey
player.
that
We
said,
haven't had enough of those.
The perfect sandwich.
Perfect
International
sandwich,
developed
which
player.
was
He's 20. He's
really
still gonna have to
strange. It
develop.
was
Your point,
what,
Rico, is he's not
Black
gonna-
Forest ham, tomato, and
mayonnaise and lettuce, right?
mayonnaise, lettuce, and on white bread.
Yeah.
What's up, Woj?
What's your favorite sandwich?
Your perfect sandwich?
Perfect sandwich. Well, I'm very, very partial to the BLT in all of its various forms, but mainly just bacon, lettuce, tomato, and Hellman's. Perfect. On toast. Whole wheat bread, toast. Perfect.
Okay.
By the way,
do
you think if Scott Harris had thrown in a BLT, they might have been able to get that deal done, huh? Is that possible?
Maybe. All right,
Did you guys
Woj.
hear about that at the trade deadline yesterday? Did you guys hear about that?
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, just found out about it.
All right, so Woj, look. I think if we play the blame game, there are plenty of people to blame, from Al Avila to Eduardo Rodriguez. But because he is the man in charge, no matter the reasons, and I'm sure there are some that we will find out and some we won't, Scott Harris has to take the hit for this.
Well, yeah, of course. He's the guy in charge. And it does make you think a little bit if why he hasn't hired a GM yet, because it sounds like I don't think necessarily things slip between the cracks here. But at the very end, with an hour to go, and you saw Scott Harris on the Zoom last night, he did look like a guy who got blindsided. And however it happens, for whatever reason, when you're the guy in charge, you can't get blindsided, because blindsided means you didn't account for every possibility, everything that could have happened. And he thought he did, and he really tried to get the best possible deal. I mean, I do give him credit. He was shooting high, shooting for the moon, so to speak, and thought he had it, and then it fell apart. Now, there's so many layers to this. Yes, you can start by blaming Scott Harris, of course, and then you dig deeper and find out, well, what went wrong and what does Erod really want? Here's my theory. You want my theory and what happened at the end?
Yeah.
Yes.
Here's my theory. Erod's cell phone battery died. Okay, no,
He was on a yacht. He was on a yacht with Bill Martin.
Yeah, there you go. No, here's my theory, okay? Of course, Harris knew he had major impediments, both the opt-out, and I do think the opt-out and the opt-in were equally damaging. Like, there were some probably smaller market teams that were just as scared of him opting in and them being stuck for $49 million for the next 3 years. But that wasn't the Dodgers. That's why he felt compelled to go to the Dodgers, because he knew they wouldn't be freaked out by the opt-in. They'd be more freaked out by the opt-out, that he could leave after, 2 months of work. I think that the Tigers, and Harris at least, thought he had a deal, thought he had Erod convinced, okay, let's do this. And ultimately, because the Dodgers did not get to speak to Erod because he's not their player, can't talk to him, so they just dealt with his agent. And I think, you got to get something when you give up something. I think at the last minute or close to the last minute, that Erod's representative wanted more from the Dodgers, wanted the contract reworked. Like, the Tigers said, well, okay, we'll do it, and okay, we'll get the contract reworked and the Dodgers, maybe they sort of agreed to something, because they seemed, Andrew Friedman seemed just as blindsided as Scott Harris. So there had to have been another layer of negotiations, not just no trade. Okay, I honestly believe that Erod's camp, as often is the case when you're making a big move like that, okay, I'll do it. Let's rework my deal. Like, let's compensate me. We'll change it. Bigger salary, shorter term, longer term, whatever. That's what I think happened, and that's why I think Harris looked blindsided, because maybe he was told the Dodgers would get it done. Maybe he was told by Erod's people, we can make this work with the Dodgers. But I could be wrong, but I don't think it was as simple as at 5:07 p.m. yesterday, everything was done, and Erod said, I changed my mind. No, I don't want to go. I don't think it's that simple. I think there were other layers.
I certainly think you're right on that there were many more layers that had to go into this. Now, obviously, Lorenzen was moved. Rodriguez wasn't, but there were other arms that could have been moved. How disappointed are you that not only is Erod still here and he's going to be on the mound today, but the fact that there was nothing else done? No one else was moved. You didn't have a lot of pieces, but you at least had a few.
Well, you did, but I'm with other people. I kind of thought the notion of them getting lots of stuff for those relievers was a bit overblown, and the reliever market wasn't that robust. But that's the disappointing part. The starting pitching market was that robust. And, of course, Tiger fans are disappointed. I don't think they're devastated. The reaction I'm getting, they're like, okay, it's his first shot. But some people kind of like that he didn't just take a completely crappy deal and try to sell it as, look at these, Dowell Lugos of the world, whatever. Look what we got in return. That said, Harris has to be disappointed. He said he's not, but just by definition, I mean, he said, I went to the market and I thought I had planned to trade 2 starting pitchers. Lots of starting pitchers were being traded, and he couldn't trade one of them. By his own ambitions, that has to be a disappointment. Right. He wanted to make a trade, and it didn't happen. So, yes, disappointment. It doesn't mean that Erod actually likes it here and wants to stay. I wouldn't go that far. He might like it here just fine, but he hasn't done many things to endear himself here long term with some of his actions. And we understand family issues last year, missed 2 months of the season. Okay, but the Tigers did bring him back and stuck with him. So I don't know. I don't know where it goes from here. I don't think he'll be here next year. I think he'll opt out and go somewhere else, maybe Miami. But yes, it's a loss by Harris. It's not an unforgivable loss. It's not an incomprehensible. You'll never overcome this loss. But it's a loss.
Yes. There's no doubt about it. Now,
and he does need to do some self-evaluation, like what went wrong.
Yeah.
Like, was I being lied to? Was I just misreading it? I use this line in my column, and I think it's fair. Did Harris misread Rodriguez, or did Rodriguez mislead Harris and the Dodgers, or Rodriguez's representation mislead people? I don't know, but I think there's probably – I mean, in negotiations, aren't you always sort of trying to mislead people a little bit, I guess? I think that's part of it.
Yeah, if you read the L.A. paper, they're like Plaschke, they're pissed off at the Dodgers that they didn't do anything, really.
Well, right. Believe me, that if you watch the video of Andrew Friedman, their director or president of baseball ops, he looks blindsided. He looks stunned. He's like, I don't know exactly what happened. Family issue, I guess. That's what he said about Erod. So, yeah, I think both sides are perplexed. So if Harris wants shared company in misery, he's got the Dodger guy to share it with him.
Do you think Erod will and should answer some very pointed questions that should be asked him today after the game?
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, be upfront about it. Now, legally obligated, no. Contractually obligated, no. But if you're humane, morally obligated to a certain degree, yes. This is your fan base that wants to know, and a team paying you lots of money and standing by you during tough times wants to know. And yeah, I will be very interested to see. He's not a big talker, but he's a nice guy. He's a polite guy. I think he'll try to answer it, or will he mislead or not tell the whole story? And again, it's important to know, at least for the Tigers and their fan base, the whole story, because we do want to know if this is a major red flag about Scott Harris, or was this just a tough situation with a tough contract I mean, Harris has been here less than a year. He doesn't know Rodriguez intimately and everything that happened last year as much as others do. We'd like to know how much this was a screw-up or inescapable hole that he couldn't avoid.
And is Scott Harris, is he taking the proverbial bullet for one of his guys and standing up there saying, protecting Erod as much as he can and taking the fall for it? And if that's the case, then Erod does. I don't necessarily. They know why Erod said he's not going to accept this deal. The Tigers know. Scott Harris knows. But if Erod is going to stand up there and be asked the questions and answer them, knowing that Scott Harris is taking the fall for it, is taking the hit for it, then yeah, I do think he owes morally a few answers. The entire story, no, but at least a few to take some of the heat off of Scott Harris if that is the case.
John, I agree completely. I do. Harris did take the high road, and he definitely has his own opinions on what happened. And I don't think he just, like some people are trying. Oh wait, he has a no trade clause? What? I didn't know. That was so blown out of proportion. And yeah, if Harris took the high road or took the bullet or whatever you want to say, yeah, I think Erod should do the same. Not lie about it, but just honestly say, whatever it was. It wasn't something that the Dodgers weren't providing for him. Because it seems to me, because both the Dodgers and Tigers seem blindsided, it seems to me the Dodgers and Tigers clearly had worked out the terms of the trade. They clearly knew which players, they knew this, they knew this. Where it had to have fallen apart was Erod and his people talking to the Dodgers. Or you can go on the theory that he just simply changed his mind for whatever reason, although that seems a little odd, and that would also be a mistake on Harris's part that it went too late, that he should have foreseen the possibility of a change of mind. But, yeah, Erod should fill in some of the blanks. And Harris did him as well as he could yesterday talking about it, didn't throw him under the bus. I think Erod, being honest, if he's being honest, should do the same.
All right, finally, the big question of the day, Woj. Dan Campbell told the Pardon My Take podcast that Sheila Ford would be okay with having a live cage lion on the sideline at the games. What's your stance on it, and what's your favorite live mascot?
Okay, now I heard this earlier. You guys went through the whole thing with the Uga and Bevo.
Wow, you were up early.
Wow. Yeah, and Ralphie. Yeah.
This whole situation kept them up.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, exactly. Did you mention the white horse that the Trojans ride in on?
No, we didn't. We had a horse. We mentioned the horse for Kansas City and
Renegade.
the horse for Florida State, Renegade.
Yeah, the USC horse. What's his name? Like Victory or something, or Majesty or something. The white horse. I like that one. Mm-hmm. Although I don't know. Do they still do that? I think they do.
We'll find out in another year.
Yeah, we will. I also agree with some of the people that you had, callers or texters, saying, I don't like the idea of a caged animal on the sidelines. Well, don't put the lion in the cage. Just have a really strong leash.
Yeah, nice chain.
Exactly.
Wojo Stoney rode in on the white horse this morning.
Oh, did he really?
Oh.
Yes, Jeeves was here to help him off too.
Yeah, exactly.
Put the lion at free safety. Get him a helmet and some shoulder pads.
What's the name of that horse, the Trojan horse? It has a name.
Traveler.
Traveler.
That's it. I knew it was something like that.
I hope nobody pays attention to the horse. We pay attention to the song girls.
Oh, what are your favorite letters, Stoney? U and C?
Oh, boy.
No, S for Stoney.
Okay. I was just curious.
Yeah.
Because you're big on uniforms.
Did you tell Wojo what you got Cindy for her birthday?
Oh.
I'm going to turn off my mic now.
What?
He's already given it to her.
All right. I got her a facial. A gift card for a facial at a salon.
Redeemed it, whatever you want.
Yeah. Has it been redeemed?
Not yet. Kind of like that jewelry store gift certificate for that.
No, don't say it.
Don't say it.
Don't say
Okay.
it.
Don't say it.
Okay.
Listen to Jansen. Don't say it.
Okay.
Poor, lovely, and talented one. She gets dragged into this all the time.
I know, and she had no idea what it was either. And a lot of people don't. All right.
Did it? Oh, I'm so close to saying something.
Woj, thank you
Don't.
for your time,
Woj.
and we'll talk to you next week.
See you at Lions Camp.
Wednesdays with Woj.
Here on 97.1, The Ticket.
Hey, you want to get away? Yes. Relax? Yes. And have a good time? Yes. Get to the D Las Vegas for everything you need. The D has taken all the necessary precautions to make sure your stay is safe and you can enjoy all the comforts of a high-end Las Vegas hotel without missing out on any of the high gaming energy and nightlife that you want. And if you want a great steak, you got to get to Andiamo. It's the best one in Vegas. Or if you want something a bit more casual, you have a few options. You got the D Grill, American Coney Island, and Bacon Nation for that morning craving of bacon that we all have. At the D Las Vegas, the staff can set you up with a round of golf, and you can party all night at the Long Bar. So get a group together. Get to the D Las Vegas. Book a room at thed.com. That's thed.com. Or if you're staying on the Strip, make sure you put the D Las Vegas in downtown Vegas on your agenda. The D Las Vegas, your home for Detroit sports in Vegas.
248-539-9797. By the way, we might as well play what we were referring to in our question with Wojo. And that was Dan Campbell with the Pardon My Take guys out at Allen Park. They'll be back there actually tomorrow. And we might actually talk to those guys as well tomorrow when we are there. PFT and Big Cat. And they were talking to Dan Campbell because they talked to him a couple of years ago.
Ironic, it would be Big Cat.
Oh, yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Yes, that's.
I mean, I could spell it out for you.
I know. I get it.
Yeah.
You know why his nickname is Big Cat? By the way?
No.
His last name is Katz.
Oh, okay.
Anyway.
Is he big?
That I don't know. He probably is. I don't know. Anyway,
Tiny.
they asked him about what they asked him 2 years ago about a live lion in a cage at Ford Field. That would be awesome.
Yeah. And if the league simply frowns on it, that's not a no.
Exactly.
So, I mean, this might be a better ask for forgiveness than permission.
Absolutely. Carson Anderson are coming up next. Doug is here. What's happening?
Oh, a lot is happening.
Oh, yeah, we know. Yeah.
I mean, this is one of the most mysterious stories in recent memory. It's funny because yesterday, I was at home, had the MLB Network on. And for the 90 minutes leading up to the trade deadline, there was almost no talk of the Tigers. Barely any discussion. 4 o'clock hits, and all the focus turned to what the hell happened with Eduardo Rodriguez, the Tigers, and the Dodgers.
Right.
And they were beside themselves. Now, Stoney, you were part of the Zoom call with Scott Harris.
Yes.
I watched the whole thing today. Watching it made me change my opinion. So we'll get into that. And
Body language?
a lot of nonverbal cues, weren't there? A lot of nonverbal cues. And I'm sure you talked about it. But I'm going to follow up on it. We'll take your phone calls. We'll play a bunch of it. We'll discuss whether or not this is maybe a good thing. I don't know, man. There's so many questions.
It's so weird because I was watching MLB too as well and listening to our station at the same time. But when they had Jim Duquette on, who was a general manager, he could not believe that this deal did not go down.
Yeah, you talk about from Scott Harris's perspective, Eduardo Rodriguez's perspective, the Dodgers' perspective.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, somewhere in the Dodgers system, there is a prospect or two that are supposed to be on their way to Erie.
Yeah.
Right? And who are those guys? Like, there's so much
hopefully higher
to discuss here. Well, hopefully they suck.
Right, exactly. Yeah. In retrospect, another 5 years, we'll find out who it was. We'll be like, whew, dodged a bullet.
All right, Carson Anderson coming up next. Have a great day, everyone. 97.1 The Ticket.
Okay, wow. I mean, wow. Who knew it would turn into an edition of Real Housewives with drama all over the place? But the Detroit Tigers do not move Eduardo Rodriguez, as just about everybody knows. And the circumstances are curious, to say the least. And like I said, the Tigers went from being a non-story on MLB Network to when the trade deadline hit, they were the story. And man, it was crazy. And there's a lot to unpack here, and we don't know the whole story even now. Although I feel like we kind of do. We'll get to that in a minute. Doug Karsch, Gator out today. Tiger baseball this afternoon, so short show, but a chance for people to sound off and give their 2 cents on not only what happened, but why it happened. We're all entitled to our opinions here. And yeah, I did not see this one coming. When the news first broke yesterday that Eduardo Rodriguez had nixed the deal, I was like, okay, how does this even happen? How do you get that far down the road with a team where a player's got that team on a no-trade clause and you don't have the player's approval? And I really don't think you do. I think Eduardo Rodriguez changed his mind. That's what I think. In lieu of hearing from him, which we will later today, and maybe he'll say it, maybe he won't. But if I watched that news conference today, went back and watched the whole thing, and the nonverbals from Scott Harris, the body language, made it pretty clear to me that Eduardo Rodriguez changed his mind. And I'm not reporting that. I'm not saying I know for a fact. That's what my gut tells me. Scott Harris, and you'll hear him throughout the day, he kept saying over and over again, we had plenty of communication with the player. We had plenty of communication all throughout the process. And I think that's his way of saying, I had his approval to do this. And he changed his mind. And if that's, and he refused to say it. He refused to say it. Said, out of respect for the process, I'd expect Eduardo, because Eduardo's earned the right. The organization, he didn't say I, he said the organization gave him a contract. He had earned the right to put a no-trade clause in there. And when it came time to actually say, okay, we've got this deal done, Eduardo Rodriguez said no. And so what's Scott Harris left to do and say? I mean, crazy thing about this is over the past 40, 20, 15, 10 years, we have gotten more and more access to stories and reporting and what happened. And this stuff probably, we wouldn't even known about it years ago, but we know about it now. And I don't know, if you watched it, King, and you watched some of it, do you get the same impression that Scott Harris is like, okay, I'm not going to tell you what happened, but his body language screamed, I got screwed here.
Not only his body language, but also the words that he used. I tend to agree with you, Doug. I think that, and this is just me and you, just the information that we have, which is available to everybody.
Yes.
This is a post.
You can go to YouTube and watch it yourself and maybe draw the same conclusion.
Yeah, I think that if I had to take a guess, my guess would be, and Scott Harris said this, he had open communication with Erod's camp the entire way.
Mm-hmm.
And during those conversations, it seems pretty clear that Erod was open to waiving his no-trade clause for certain teams, maybe being the Dodgers is one of them, right?
Yep.
And so Harris went down that road. Him and his team went down that road to explore a trade. They came to an agreement. They also still ultimately had to get Erod's approval. And when they went to get his approval, he either changed his mind or just, obviously he said no, but they wouldn't have gone that far down the road if they didn't think that, hey, this was a real possibility. And I think you're right. I'm not, I'm not going to go after Erod. He has that right. It's in his contract. Does it ultimately kind of screw the Tigers in getting assets? Yes, but that was his right. And I have so many questions along the way, Doug. You're right. This is a drama. This is like an NBA, NFL offseason thing. That Major League Baseball usually doesn't have something like this.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're watching MLB Network and they just flipped the switch and started talking only Tigers, because this was crazy.
It was crazy.
I have so many questions throughout this whole process, even to the end of why Erod even used his no trade clause. But in the end, I think the end result is, unfortunately, if you wanted something in return, the Tigers didn't get anything in return.
No, and it's a swing and miss. There was no acceptable plan B, and we can get into that and whether or not they should have just gone to the next buyer and taken whatever was offered. And Harris kind of addresses that, and we'll play sound throughout the day. But I mean, the thing that there's been some reporting. Okay, one guy I respect. But he's not a Tiger beat writer, but he's pretty dialed in. But he's the only one that reported this, is Lynn Henning, okay? And Lynn Henning tweeted out yesterday, and I haven't seen anybody else report this. So if somebody else has, fair, we missed it. But Lynn Henning addressed this, and there hasn't been any pushback or any acknowledgement that he is right. So, Lynn's typically dialed in, but he's not on the beat anymore. But here's what he tweeted out. Eduardo Rodriguez had, in fact, agreed to the Tigers trade with L.A. Things changed. We'll only submit that this follows by a year Eduardo Rodriguez departure from the team to sort out some marital issues. Can easily imagine a spouse saying, I'm not going to L.A. Next tweet. Scott Harris has done in 9 months a pretty much grade A job in running the Tigers. Tonight he apparently got blindsided by Eduardo Rodriguez's change of heart on a trade to the Dodgers. Harris's distance and detachment from talking about the Tigers is a separate issue. So there's that. Okay? Look, the guy has the right to change his mind. I've changed my mind on things. Kang, you've changed your mind. People change their mind. Typically, when I change my mind, or you change your mind, or you out there change your mind, thousands of people aren't impacted by it. People who feel vested in this team and want to see what's best for this team. So, a human did a very human thing, in my estimation. And we all go, what the F happened? Because we do feel a sense of ownership. We do feel a sense of this being our team, and we have the right to know. And we may find out. Eduardo Rodriguez may address it today when he speaks. And it'll be interesting to see, because Scott Harris yesterday in that Zoom call, I mean, he didn't get beat up. But he took some punches, man.
Well, he had to, you know? I mean, there's a lot of questions that were to be asked. What the hell happened, right?
Yep.
And I don't think Erod tried to screw the Tigers over.
I don't either.
But in the end, he did kind of screw the Tigers. And that's what you're talking about, ownership, and thousands and tens of thousands of people, whatever, that feel that they're vested into the Tigers, And so he kind of screwed those fans over. And like I said, I don't think he did it on purpose or anything like that, because he is human. He made a choice, and then maybe he changed his mind on that choice. We don't know for sure. But in the end, like I said, Scott Harris, though, he didn't get anything for Erod. And that bothers a lot of people. It bothers me. And I'm floored, actually. I just can't believe
it's hard to believe.
Happened.
They had a commodity that was coveted, and they got zero for him. Now, where Harris either inexperience showed, or where Harris maybe blew it, we will get into that today at 10:20. Plus your phone calls and feedback. It's Carson Anderson, Gator Out today. We want to know what you think went down. And, I mean, we can get a little bit, I don't like to do this typically as a topic, but it feels a little bit of who's to blame. And, for this trade not happening. Are you more upset with Harris? Are you upset at Erod? Is there nobody to be upset with? because this is life, and it feels to me like a human made a human decision. And I think we should accept that collectively as a society, even if we are fans and feel a huge sense of disappointment over not getting something back for Eduardo Rodriguez. It's Carson Anderson, 97.1 The Ticket. Ken Rosenthal tweeted or wrote a story for The Athletic saying the pressure on buyers is mounting. But we got our new guy in charge in Scott Harris, and all reports say he set a high price for people who want to deal with the Tigers. I mean, they can't go through today without trading, right? So he's got to, at some point, blink. And so who blinks first? Do the buyers concede to his asking price? Or does Scott Harris say, okay, because they've had preliminary talks. You know that he has talked to teams, and the buyers being teams like Baltimore, the Reds, Atlanta, maybe Miami, Houston, the Dodgers, whomever. I mean, not everybody's going to be interested in who you have to offer, but somebody is. And they've had preliminary talks and the outlines of deals, and Scott Harris says, I want A and B, and a team says, well, we'll give you B. And then you go, okay, maybe we'll circle back. But you kind of have an outline of what a team is willing to give up for your guys, and you know what you asked for your guys. And so does Scott Harris take this right down to 6 o'clock and eventually pick up the phone and call somebody and say, okay? Or does it go right down to 6 o'clock and that somebody says,
John, you always, in a weird way, have taught me, just let your play do the talk.
Let your pad speak.
Don't worry about the other stuff. And lately, especially this off season, forgetting about the NCAA stuff, just the things coming from the coach of this football team, from Jim Harbaugh, it's not Michigan-like to me. Bragging about how many guys you think are going to be drafted. They have a Georgia drill, talking national championship.
Well, there's no bragging about the Georgia drill. The Georgia drill is because they haven't beaten Georgia or anybody like Georgia.
Okay, well, they only played Georgia once.
Games. Right, all right, but they've lost to Alabama in a bowl game. They've lost to Florida in a bowl game. They've lost to Georgia in a bowl game. They lost to TCU in a bowl game.
Okay.
Oh, they get to the SEC and they're not ready to play. Because that's the counter to that. That's what we're going to hear next. When they weren't focused on playing Georgia.
And who knows if they're going to play Georgia? Who knows if they make the college football playoffs this year? There's a lot of people that are predicting that they will.
Right. But I don't want to hear Michigan people brag about them right now.
You don't want to hear Michigan people brag about their team?
Their coach and their players. Just
let's not celebrate.
Sorry.
Yeah, let's learn who this guy is first.
Wrong sport.
And wrong nation. This is not a Russian player. The Tigers have traded Michael Lorenzen by himself, no package, no sweetener.
Wait. So Scott Harris was doing something.
He was doing something.
Okay, just check.
We'll see if it's something
Just
good.
wait till we get what he got.
Lorenzen to the Phillies by himself, no sweetener, no package. 1 for 1. Is this 1 for 1, David?
That's what it looks like.
And it's a second baseman from the Phillies, their farm system. He's not a top 100 player. He's number 5 in their system, a 20-year-old. Hao-Yu Lee. He's a Taiwanese second baseman. Your reaction?
Well, looking at it, looks like he's projected to be at the big ball club now in 2 years, 2025.
Yep.
So he can play 3 positions
Scott
in
Harris,
the infield.
the Tiger president of baseball operations. And wow, what a curious day yesterday was. And look, before the break, and we'll get to your phone calls, I asked, what was the mistake? If there's a mistake, right, it's not having an acceptable plan B. They went all the way down the road with the Dodgers, and they had a deal that they liked. They had their price for Eduardo Rodriguez. I'm fascinated to know who's supposed to be in the Tigers organization today, but there was no plan B. So the question becomes, and he did essentially say, look, we weren't giving him away for players that we didn't think could help us. And so you go, oh, come on, it's better than nothing. What if the players, somebody else had offered, all right, here's what the best offer they had, or one of the offers they had is, we've got these highly rated prospects we're willing to give you. And Scott Harris looked at those prospects and said, yeah, they've got some attributes we like, but their strike zone discipline reminds me of Javi Baez. These are not people we want in our organization. We don't want people swinging irresponsibly at pitches out of the zone. You could say, take it anyway. He decided not to. And I'm just using that for an example. Like when you start thinking about what the plan B that he turned down must have been, I'm just using as an example. Now, do I think that there's no way they could have had an acceptable plan B for one of the most coveted commodities on the trade market? It's hard for me to believe.
Well, that's the real question, Doug, because if plan B was that bad, like spare parts, someone you don't want, because I understand you don't want to get rooked. Like, you don't want, you can't just be known as a team like, hey, the Tigers will end up giving you a guy
just
for nothing.
Wait him out. And
wait him out. They'll end
no.
up giving. No, you can't do it. That's why you don't make the trade, right? If you don't get an acceptable offer, you don't make the trade. But the real question is, like you said, why wasn't there an acceptable offer after the Dodgers? Where is that offer?
Where's the creating the market for your and that is one of the traits that you want in a good GM. You have to be able to identify young talent, bring them into your organization, but you also have to have the ability to help create the market for your guys and get the best deals at times like this.
And so, yeah, I'm not in full panic mode with Scott Harris, but I am a little concerned
I'm
here.
a little concerned. It's all data points that you bring in formulating your opinion of what he's going to be. We had no idea how he was going to handle the first trade deadline. You can't call this a win. You can't call this a data point that you put on the plus side.
You had assets.
Unless,
and you came out with...
unless they re-sign Erod, he wins the Cy Young next year, and Hao-Yu Lee becomes a starting second baseman in the next 2 years and is an all-star. Then I guess time will tell on that, but
right now it doesn't look good.
It is not a data point I'm putting in the plus column.
No, and the obvious are this is his first time. He's inexperienced. He's young, and so this is what we got to work with. He didn't hire a GM. He's the president, so he had to do this not on his own. He's got a team, but he's the de facto GM until they hire one. Yeah, I don't think this is a great look now.
And I still think it's understandable how the Erod trade got nixed because I think he changed his mind. But I'm not happy that there was no plan B, an acceptable plan B.
And ultimately, when you're the leader, everything falls back on you.
Yes. And you make a great point. If he had just given him away, if there really was only one suitor, the Dodgers, I don't know how that happens, but if there was really only one suitor with an acceptable offer, I don't give him away either.
You don't.
Because of the reputation. You start to set a trend of just wait out the Tigers, Scott Harris, okay.
Everyone knows you can fleece them. Yep. Just wait it out. That's kind of what Avila did, right?
Yes.
He was like, I'll just give him away for nothing.
Yep.
Well, guess what?
He kept giving away guys for nothing.
Exactly.
And what do we have in return for all the purges? Just north of nothing. With all respect to Reese Olson, who might be something, Joey Wentz, who can be useful, Jake Rogers, who's been useful, Zach Short. I mean, but none of these players are leading you to a championship now. They could be parts on a championship team, but all right, let's get to the people. 248-539-9797. Rob is on 97.1 A Ticket. Hi, Rob.
Hey, Doug. Yeah, it's interesting you just talked about Al's returns because I feel like Verlander might become our Tigers' curse here. We know the Dodgers, there were reports that they were interested in Verlander, and that pushed out close to the deadline. Perhaps Scott Harris had option 2 for the Dodgers. So by Verlander going to Houston, Dodgers being spurned, they then come to us, Scott Harris, and that limited the time that Scott had to pivot when Eduardo said no. So Al's return for Verlander was not good, and now perhaps the second trade with Verlander, the Mets are looking good in the future, and we're left holding the bag again.
It's possible. It's absolutely possible. And one of the worst parts about this, Rob, is I can't shake the feeling that Eduardo Rodriguez is having a career year and won't repeat this. Meaning,
absolutely,
you have one shot. We collectively, I hate the accusation to you, but the Tigers organization had one shot to cash in this chip, and it's come and gone. And now he either will get to free agency, or he'll work out a new deal with Detroit, or possibly opt in. I just find it questionable that a 30-year-old at this point in his career, the light went on, he's going to be a dominant pitcher for a few years. And,
I agree 100%.
But I will say this. It'll be a funny little footnote and a great plot twist if he becomes a key part of a playoff team moving forward. I mean, if I'm wrong and the light has gone on, and if it's possible, and to think about it, it might be that he really truly loves it here, and that's why he turned it down, and turned down moving to L.A., competing for a World Series, because this is where he's having the best year of his career. Chris Fetter's got him dialed in. His personal life is back on track, and he just says, let's ride this out. I mean, it could be a funny little footnote as Scott Harris builds his team.
See, that's another question I have, Doug, is let's say he really loves it here. He wants to stay here. Mm-hmm. He wants to be here for the long term. You can do that in 2 months.
I know.
You go to L.A.
I know.
You compete for a World Series. It's only 2 months. You get the same contract and you still have the opt-out. Then come back.
Hard to believe.
And that's why
it's really,
so much of this does not make any sense to me.
It's really odd.
They weren't trying to ship him off to some, Indonesia team. You know what I mean? Right. Or like you're never going to be heard from again. No, man. It's 2 months to compete for a World Series in L.A.
Indonesia was on his no-trade list. 248-539-9797. Gary, you're on 97.1 A Ticket. What's up, Gary?
Yeah, hi. As a long-tenured Tiger fan whose tendency has always been to be quick in blaming the Tigers' management for a long history of bad decisions, I think in this case it's premature for anybody to be upset, because I think the time to become upset would be in the offseason if and when he signs with another team. But I'm thinking that's not going to happen. I'm thinking he's going to remain a Tiger, and let's review the evidence for thinking that. One, the Tigers were very kind to him last year, letting him go take care of his personal matters with pay for a few months, just like they're doing with Austin Meadows. The Tigers have a long history of treating players good, and now I understand they have a lot of staff where they make players better. Players, I think, are going to be gravitating to the Tigers, and I don't see why this deal wouldn't have gotten done.
Here's the only thing, is when they put him on the restricted list last year, Major League rules state you do not receive your salary. So they didn't pay him in that time. But he might still be grateful that they let him sort things out, A, and B, I mean, this is the biggest evidence that he might like it here, is he said no for a chance at the World Series and the Cali lifestyle. Now, not everybody at every point in their life wants the Cali lifestyle. I mean, I love living in this state, but at the end of the day, it's going to be interesting to see if this is part of it. He'll speak today, and we may learn a lot, because he's getting a start this afternoon with a 12:35 first pitch. So after the game, he'll presumably address the media and maybe provide a little bit of insight into why he nixed this trade.
Well, until that happens, I would just advise my fellow Tiger fans the same thing that Aaron Rodgers advised Packer fans a few years ago, and that would be RELAX.
Thank you, Gary. Appreciate it. It's Carson Anderson. More of your phone calls and feedback. Later, you'll hear from Scott Harris, 97.1 The Ticket.
You know, John, you always, in a weird way, have taught me, just let your play do the talking.
Let your pad speak.
Don't worry about the other stuff. And lately, especially this off season, forgetting about the NCAA stuff, just the things coming from the coach of this football team, from Jim Harbaugh, it's not Michigan-like to me. Bragging about how many guys you think are going to be drafted. They have a Georgia drill, talking national championship.
Well, there's no bragging about the Georgia drill. The Georgia drill is because they haven't beaten Georgia or anybody like Georgia.
Okay, well, they only played Georgia once.
Games. Right, all right, but they've lost to Alabama in a bowl game. They've lost to Florida in a bowl game. They've lost to Georgia in a bowl game. They lost to TCU in a bowl game.
Okay.
Oh, they get to the SEC and they're not ready to play. Because that's the counter to that. That's what we're going to hear next. When they weren't focused on playing Georgia.
And who knows if they're going to play Georgia? Who knows if they make the college football playoffs this year? There's a lot of people that are predicting that they will.
Right. But I don't want to hear Michigan people brag about them right now. I mean,
you don't want to hear Michigan people brag about their team?
Their coach and their players. Just
let's not celebrate.
Sorry.
Yeah, let's learn who this guy is first.
Wrong sport.
and wrong nation. This is not a Russian player. The Tigers have traded Michael Lorenzen by himself, no package, no sweetener.
So Scott Harris was doing something.
He was doing something.
Okay, just check.
See if it's something
Just
good.
wait till we get what he got.
Lorenzen to the Phillies by himself, no sweetener, no package. 1 for 1. Is this 1 for 1, David?
That's what it looks like.
And it's a second baseman from the Phillies, their farm system. He's not a top 100 player. He's number 5 in their system, a 20-year-old. Hao Yu Lee. He's a Taiwanese second baseman. Your reaction?
Well, looking at it, looks like he's projected to be at the big ball club now in 2 years, 2025. So he can play 3 positions in the infield. I mean,
he's in high A ball, hitting 283 right now, on base 372. We like on base. That's the whole thing here. Look, I didn't think you're getting a top 100 prospect for Lorenzen straight up, so I'm not going to sit here and this is a terrible return. It's fine, I guess. He's a young player, international player. We haven't had enough of those international developed players. Right. He's 20. He's still going to have to develop. Your point, Rico, is he's not going to be here this year.
Doug Karsh, Gator out today, 248-539-9797. Wow. I mean, this is a crazy turn of events. Did not see this coming, and suddenly the Detroit Tigers and the drama surrounding the Tigers became the story of the trade deadline. It became the story of the trade deadline. MLB Network, look, I had it on, and I'm like, all right, well, I'm not Michael Lorenzen for the Phillies' 5th prospect is going to get a little bit of discussion, and it really didn't. because everybody was focused on Verlander and the Yankees not making a trade, and this was carrying the day on MLB Network. 4:00 hits, and all of a sudden, all the attention turned to what the hell happened with Detroit and the Dodgers. And after watching the Scott Harris Zoom call with the media, body language and nonverbals, my number one takeaway is Eduardo Rodriguez changed his mind. He changed his mind on Scott Harris. And Scott Harris looked like a man who had a lot to say, but just kept saying the same thing. Out of respect for the Eduardo Rodriguez, I'm not going to go into details. He had the right to do what he did, and we had communication throughout the process, and the deal didn't go down.
Let's say you're right, Doug, and your guess is that, Rodriguez changed his mind at the last minute, which makes a lot of sense, to be honest with you.
Yep.
He ended up screwing over the Tigers, though.
Mm-hmm.
And that last caller was talking about how, maybe, the Tigers treat players right. Maybe the Tigers want, free agents want to come here. Players want to stay here. You know what Erod could have really done to help the Tigers is got traded to L.A., Tigers could have got assets, and he could have re-signed with the Tigers in the offseason.
Yep.
That would have been Scott Harris having his cake and eating it too, right?
And that would have been Erod getting a chance at a World Series.
Yep.
And still being with an organization he loved.
With more assets.
With more assets. Literally, I mean, not literally, but 2 months after he got sent out, he could have said, season's over. He'd known in his own mind, I'm going back to Detroit. That never happens, by the way. Everybody talks about it when you sell a rental. You can sign it back. It almost never happens.
No, but this situation is so strange and how much he opted in. So people are thinking, well, he really does like it here, right? Because those other situations, they let the guy go because they're not sure what he's going to do. They don't know if he likes it here or not or what it is. Apparently, the rest of the Scott Harris interview, he says how much that Erod wants to be here.
Yep.
Like, he's giving me strong indications he wants to come back.
Yep.
He wants to opt in. Or if he doesn't opt in, we're going to make him an offer where he's going to be happy with and stay here. That's why I think a lot of people feel like, hey, he could have played for a World Series contender for 2 months and then come right back.
So the things that I find more curious, and look, this is curious. You know what else is curious and maybe a little bit more troubling for me? They didn't trade anybody else. They had assets out of the bullpen, and none of them got dealt? At the trade deadline, everybody's looking for bullpen help. Everybody. And I'm shocked that no relievers got dealt. Right? I mean, how does that happen? You're talking about having a bullpen filled with coveted arms, and none of them got dealt? That's what really surprised me. Not more. It's a different kind of surprise, but I was surprised by that as well. So there's all kinds of mysteries here. The mystery of why Eduardo Rodriguez said no to the Dodgers, although there is some reporting on that from the LA side that we'll get to. The mystery of how there was no plan B, acceptable plan B. I mean, it sounds like Scott Harris said, I'm not taking just anybody for a variety of reasons that we've laid out. And the mystery of not trading any of the other bullpen arms. Seems really, really odd.
That's why at the end of the day, this was a check minus.
Yeah,
for Scott Harris. Yeah. At the end of the day, even the Erod, and not just Erod, but you just mentioned, where are the rest of the returns?
Now, I've kind of put blinders on to a lot of criticism that gets out there on social media, because I do think it's a lot of screaming and yelling and not a lot of thought put into some of it. I haven't seen anybody say this is fireable offense or anything like that. I think it's simply I try to keep it in context as a check minus or a data point that doesn't exactly work for him. But you can stumble uphill, man. You can fall uphill. And if Eduardo Rodriguez, if the light has gone on and he truly loves Detroit and he opts in or signs here and is a great pitcher for the next 2-3 years, then this is falling uphill. And you, as somebody who's running an organization, You know what you don't ever do? Nobody, even the best ones. You never bat 1,000. Okay? You make mistakes along the way. And even if it is a check minus or a negative data point or whatever you want to call it, yeah, could work out. Could work out. 248-539-9797. Back to your phone calls. Bob is next on 97.1. What's up, Bob?
Hey, guys. Great show, as usual.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. No, my point is, Eduardo Rodriguez, a trade, to me, it's good that he's staying. My point is, if you're in the weak division like we are, right, and we're the third lowest run-scoring team in the American League, it's not going to be that tough to really win the division. I mean, keep them for the next few years, get some bats. I mean, when you're 8 games under 500 and you're 5 games out of first, it's got to tell you something. You know, let's go get some bats, and we don't have to play 600 ball to win this division.
You're talking about this year?
No, I'm not talking about this year. I'm talking about next year.
Okay, gotcha.
Oh this year, every time they start to win, then they go 3-7 over the next 10, and there you go. But
I thought, Bob, something that John Morosi told the morning show that was really interesting is he said the Tigers are approaching this offseason like they've got a chance to win next year. They didn't want to trade any bullpen arms that were controllable. So, Lang and Foley were guys that they wanted to hang on to. I was a little surprised they didn't trade Cisnero or anybody else. But the fact is, if Morosi is correct, then look, Chris Ilitch, Scott Harris, give us what we want, an aggressive offseason. Now, what scares me is if they fade and they finish 17 games under and 12 games out of first, it makes it hard to attract free agents. They got to stay within
5 or so games of 500, and then next year is approachable. If they start to tank and with the Royals, then that's a whole different ballgame.
It's semi-important for them to stay close, right? It's semi-important for them to stay close-ish to first place, so you don't look like you are miles away from a playoff spot. Because they got a ton of money falling off the books. They've got pieces in the minors that could be on the way that can help. They've got an important bat in Torkelson that's going to get important at-bats for his development the last 2 months of this season. I mean, there's a path to better things. It takes a little bit of faith, right, that Torque is going to work out. But the controllable is to be a player in the free agent market. And when you get into the free agent market or the trade market to add some veterans to help you, the convincing of those veterans that this is a place you want to be. I think the Tigers actually have a pretty decent reputation as far as an organization that will treat you well. And that might speak to why Scott Harris spent all day yesterday potentially taking a bullet for a player changing his mind when Harris is the one that's going to take the public beating, is to protect the player. Again, this is not what I'm reporting. This is my speculation as to what went down. 248-539-9797. Phone calls, feedback. All right, there was an interesting report out of L.A. We will get to that. In the 11 o'clock hour, we'll play the best of what Scott Harris had to say yesterday in a Zoom call with the media. Tiger baseball this afternoon. Gator out today. 97.1 The Ticket. We'll get into that deal a little bit later on. It wasn't a total swing and miss, but look, Scott Harris, the president of baseball ops, has taken a bit of a beating today, and I get why. Over the years, one of the things that when something doesn't make sense, with the information that's available to us, my default thought isn't, well, this organization is being run by morons, and yet sometimes that's the case. My default thought is, okay, what the heck happened? How did we get here? How do you get to a point where you reach an agreement on a trade with a team, in the Dodgers in this case, that a player, Eduardo Rodriguez in this case, has a no-trade clause? How do you get there where you agree to the terms, you've got your trade all worked out, and then the player says, nope, I'm not going there? You wasted your time. That's the first impression that I think we all had. Okay, so if this organization is being run by a competent and reasonable person, could this possibly have happened to a competent and reasonable general manager? And the answer is yes. And there's a couple of ways. My first thought is Dodgers called it 5 o'clock yesterday and said, hey, we'll give you A, B, and C. And it's the first Scott Harris has heard about. And he said, how about you throw in D? And they said, okay. And I was all right, let me just call the player and get approval. And he calls the player and the player says no. That was my first thought, is that it was a late developing trade, first conversations with the Dodgers, and they liked the terms before they got Eduardo Rodriguez's approval. Well, that didn't happen. That, my first thought was not actually what happened. So then you go, okay, how could we get to this point where a reasonable and competent GM has a player, nicks a trade at the last minute when it's a deal they've been working on? Because Scott Harris said over and over again, we had conversations throughout the process, but he wouldn't explain why it got nixed. And when Scott Harris says, we've had those conversations, the players earned the right, he's got every right to do what he did. This organization gave him a contract. He didn't say me. He didn't say I gave him a contract. He said this organization gave him a contract, and he has every right. He earned that right. So he's making sure that people don't blame Eduardo Rodriguez. How does a competent, reasonable GM get to this point? Well, perhaps a player changed his mind. And I mean, look, if you watch the YouTube video and didn't think he seemed uncomfortable, didn't think he seemed like he had a lot more to say, I'm interested to have that conversation, because we're all left to read the nonverbals. And we're all left to speculate. So the story out of L.A., and it was in the Free Press. I think it was Jeff Seidel's story. I'll read this verbatim. Jack Harris, the Dodgers beat writer for the Los Angeles Times, wrote on social media, the, quote, Dodgers were surprised that Eduardo Rodriguez vetoed the trade. They hadn't been directly told he would waive his no-trade clause by the Tigers or Erod's agent, but they didn't know it would be an issue until it came time to complete the deal. So the Dodgers is being put out there, didn't know either. So we await to hear Erod's side of the story. Now, I will also say it is possible, because I keep saying, could this happen to a reasonable and competent GM? It could also be a mistake. It could also be he mishandled the situation. It could also be that he's not reasonable and competent. But this and this alone doesn't have me drawing the conclusion that he's unreasonable and incompetent. Other things can happen where I could get there. This doesn't necessarily help. And it certainly doesn't scream that he's absolutely competent. 248-539-9797. Let's get back to your open line calls. We go to Alan next here on 97.1. Hi, Alan.
Hey, I think time will tell with Scott Harris. A lot of things could have happened with Erod. I don't know. If he's on the team next year, then I think this is water under the bridge. If he's not on the team and he opts out, then we have to see what materializes. Did Erod opt out, or did he say he was reneging on the trade? Did his agent make the decision and say, hey, playing in a weak Tigers division, he can pad his stats more, opt out, make more money than if he's playing with the Dodgers. It's a mystery, but I think we have to see how it plays out. Regarding Lorenzen, I mean, that's going to take a little bit of time. If this second baseman becomes an everyday player, I mean, that's going to look like a good trade. If he ends up not playing in the big leagues, then you're going to wonder. But so far, when you look at the preceding general manager's body of work, I mean, you got to give Scott Harris a little bit of time. So I'm with you in saying, hey, I'm not indicting him yet. Let's see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't sign Javi Baez. He didn't sign Eduardo Rodriguez with his no trade clause. He's kind of still cleaning up the previous guy's mess, right? I mean, there's no doubt that he has been. He kept, the term he used a bunch. He used this term yesterday a bunch. There were contractual headwinds, meaning I was trying like crazy to deal this guy, but between the opt-out and the no-trade clause, this wasn't the easiest thing to find a trade partner, and I didn't sign this contract with this player.
There's a couple of other things also, which one, sometimes you have to wait things out, and it may take a year to unwind the psychology and the perception with dealing with the Tigers. So when Al Avila at the very end seemed to panic and take whatever offer he had, I mean, maybe they should have not traded J.D. Martinez and lost him at the end of the year. And then at least you're more respected as a trade partner. Maybe you have to hold on to some players to level set things and say, listen, I'm not just going to give away our assets. I'm going to get fair value for them. And then the other thing is the players they didn't trade that maybe people wanted them to trade, how many of them are still under contract and controllable, and they could be traded next year maybe for more than what they were offered this year.
Traded in the
and it also shows that they're in a weak division, so you never know. While I don't think they're going to contend, you never know, and that door is still open.
Well, I don't expect them to contend this year, but I think any team that gets hyper aggressive in this division, any team that does that can have the leg up next year. This division is populated with a bunch of average baseball teams to below average baseball teams. A good off season. Literally anyone, maybe the exception of the Royals because they're so bad. But if I were a fan of the White Sox, I'd be thinking we're one good offseason away from running this show. And I think the Tigers should feel better because they're better than the White Sox right now. 248-539-9797. Isaac is next. What's up, Isaac?
Hey, Doug. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you.
So is there any chance that Scott Harris is the black sheep of GMs in the MLB right now? Like, he wouldn't be reckless enough knowing that Erod's like, no, I don't want to go to L.A., but he didn't really have any other trade partners, so he wastes a bunch of L.A.'s time when they should have been pursuing other people. They had no idea that Erod was going to nix the trade, and he was, arrogant enough to think that at the last second he could get him to change his mind or, entice him in some other way. Or, I heard people from L.A., his old teammates were calling and texting him. I mean, I'm fearful that he totally screwed the Dodgers over, who are a power player in the league, and now Scott Harris is a pariah.
Why would Scott Harris be a pariah for screwing over the Dodgers?
I don't know. Is there like a brotherhood or an unspoken, norm within GMs?
I would think everybody else in the league would think it's hilarious and love Scott Harris for screwing over the Dodgers.
All right, then maybe I'm looking at this wrong. Maybe he just got a bunch of clout and respect.
So maybe, but I don't know. I mean, my first instinct is if you screw over one of the Goliaths of the league, everybody else loves you for it. But at the end of the day, it is possible. What you just brought up is something we hadn't talked about. Is it possible that he had no other deals? The Dodgers were the only team, and he knew it. And he knew he wouldn't accept it, but he struck this deal, and then turned to Eduardo and said, please, please, please change your mind. And he just said, no, it's possible.
Yeah. I don't know. I would think even if everybody was happy that he screwed over the Dodgers, fast forward a year or 2 years and you're whoever, the Reds, and you're dealing with Scott Harris, they're going to be like, remember what this guy did to L.A.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I don't think this hurts his reputation around the league. I think it hurts his reputation with Tiger fans. So next hour, you'll hear what he had to say. Plus, I want to talk a little bit about Hao-Yu Lee, our new second base, our new number 6 prospect in the organization that they got from Michael Lorenzen. All that coming up. Tiger baseball this afternoon. Carson Anderson, Gator out today, 97.1.
Brought to you by DuckDuckGo. As Jameson Williams works on his skills and gets set to serve a 6-game suspension, Dan Campbell says to get ready for a healthy dose of the second-year wide receiver during preseason games. Yeah, Dan says they're working on his hand mechanics to fix some of his drops in camp. Also, coach saying they've addressed the low preventable hit on Shane Zylstra that caused the tight end to suffer a season-ending injury. Sam Laporta and Penei Sewell, by the way, back on the field from their injuries. Also, the team signed a couple of additional tight ends due to the Zylstra injury, and created more competition at the position. In Ann Arbor, Michigan, beginning their camp, players saying they're committed to being better than last year's team, who made the playoffs but were knocked out by TCU. Also, the Tigers moving forward with Eduardo Rodriguez. He'll turn around from that dramatic trade deadline and pitch this afternoon in Pittsburgh to wrap up the miniseries. Opting not to speak with the media last night, his first thoughts will be after his outing today. First pitch from PNC Park will be right here on 97.1 at 12:35 with Dan Dickerson on the call. They'll attempt to split the series. At the Ticket Update desk, I'm Chris Villar. For more, go to 97.1 The Ticket and Odyssey.com.
You know that he has talked to teams, and the buyers being teams like Baltimore, the Reds, Atlanta, maybe Miami, Houston, the Dodgers, whomever. I mean, not everybody's going to be interested in who you have to offer, but somebody is. And they've had preliminary
Doug
talks.
Carr,
and the
skater out
outlines and
today.
deals, and
Carson
Scott
Anderson
Harris says,
program.
I want A and
all
B,
kinds
and
of
the team
ways
says,
to
well, we'll
take
give
it
you
in.
B.
Obviously, thank you all of you who tuned in on 97.1. You can stream the show with the Odyssey app. Download it for your mobile device today. AUDACY. It's got the rewind feature, so you can go back and listen to what we were saying up to 24 hours on the station. But someday, at some point, you'll be out of town and you'll wish you had the Odyssey app. And then you could download it then. But I suggest you do it now. That way you're all set and ready to go. So when a big story like this breaks and you're out of town, you can tune in and find out what the hell's going on in Detroit. Because this is one of those days. It was confusing. We've been left to draw our own conclusions. And we have. I think Eduardo Rodriguez changed his mind. And this is based on watching Scott Harris in the Zoom call yesterday. I think he changed his mind. And so he did all this work on this trade. There was a sense of frustration from Scott Harris. There was a lot of very measured statements. There was a lot of deep breaths. There was a lot of nonverbal cues that tell me he had a lot more to say. But he kept saying out of respect for the player and the no trade clause that he earned. He even went so far at one point to say, don't make Eduardo the bad guy. I get the sense that he was protecting his guy. He was protecting the player from public criticism, that he was taking the bullets for this. Now, that's my sense. And you can watch it yourself on YouTube and draw a completely different conclusion. We're all... We don't know the whole story. Everybody reads body language. Everybody tries to figure out what's going on. It could be just flat out incompetence. It could be inexperience showing. I think there's more to this story. And the more to the story, I think, is the player in question, Eduardo Rodriguez, told him early, yeah, I'd strongly consider that or I'll do that. And then later said, you know what? No. That's what I think happened.
And then the inexperience of Scott Harris may show where people are asking, okay, where's plan B? Where's option 2, right? I mean, you can't just negotiate with one team who, by the way, is not a definitive option because he's got the no trade clause to that team. So maybe work on other deals. And maybe, obviously, I'm guessing Harris did and the Tigers did. And the second best deal was way off of what the Dodgers were offering. And he said it, and we'll play more sound later. He's not just going to give them up for spare parts. And I think I actually kind of respect that point of it because you can't let the league know, hey, we're here to be fleeced. At some point, we're just going to give away players. And Scott Harris doesn't want to do that. It looked like Al Avila did that a lot. And maybe that's why other teams kept giving him garbage in return because they're like, hey, he's going to eventually take it.
Lynn Henning, who, tweets a lot about the Tigers and used to be on the beat, and we read his tweet earlier. Eduardo Rodriguez had, in fact, agreed to the Tigers trade with the Dodgers. Things changed. We'll only submit that this follows by a year. Eduardo's departure from the team to sort out some serious marital issues. Can easily imagine a spouse saying, I'm not going to L.A. And he's the one that's reporting this. I guess there has been some other reporting. I couldn't find the quote you had. Did you see the quote? Is it in a Freep story? I couldn't find it.
Okay, so sticking with the family stuff, according to, this is in the Detroit Free Press today, Evan Petzold, he wrote that the Tigers learned of Rodriguez's decision less than an hour before the deadline. This is a quote from Andrew Friedman, the Dodgers president. We didn't expect it at all. We hadn't known one way or the other. We thought with having a lot of his ex-teammates and guys he's played with, our place in the standings, I thought we'd be very desirable. We never got a chance to talk to Eduardo himself, but we did talk to his agent numerous times. We respect that he had his right to exercise, the no trade clause. Obviously, we'd love for him to join us and what we have going on here, but it's hard for us to argue with family reasons. So clearly, through his agent, because they didn't talk to Erod, the Dodgers, through his agent, he told him basically, it's family reasons, I'm not waiving my no trade clause. Whatever those family reasons are.
So, I mean, the Dodgers are a pretty well-respected organization. And aren't they kind of, if you're really mad at Scott Harris, isn't it kind of true that the Dodgers did the same thing the Tigers did? They talked to the agent, they talked to the Tigers, and the agent
had them believing they should go down that road. Their president of baseball operations, Andrew Friedman, said as much.
Yeah, since there was no definitive yes or no, let's just continue to work this out in case there's a yes, right?
Yeah.
And they came to an agreement, went to the Erod camp, and they ultimately said, no thanks. We're not going to do it because of family reasons.
All right, so anyway, let's get back to the people. 248-539-9797. Again, streaming on the Odyssey app, streaming through our website, 971theticket.com, streaming with video, twitch.tv, search up 971theticket, and streaming on YouTube. Go to youtube.com and then search up 971theticket, and bam, there we are. Myself and Kang, Gator out today. Let's get back to your phone calls. Brian in Detroit. What's up, Brian?
Doug, you and Kang pretty smart guys. That GM for the Tigers a pretty smart guy. He had to know when he started negotiating, the centerpiece was that no trade clause. That player told him he would go. There's no way in the world they just go do all that work on a guess. He told him, and that GM don't want to throw him under the bus. When I was listening to the show yesterday, Cookies and my brother, he made it seem like that guy was. They made it once they found out what happened. They made it seem like that GM didn't know what he was doing. And I just knew that player did that. They set all that up. They talked. He told, because it's easy for a player, Doug, to say yes, and at the very end, because the agent is the one to deliver all the news. So at the end, he changed his mind at the very end and squashed the whole deal. It's not on the Tigers. It's not on the Dodgers. It's on that player. And Ken, you talking about, well, what about Plan B? The plan. There was no Plan B. I don't know if it's a Plan B or not. Once the player say I go, that's what I'm working on. How you gonna change your mind at the end of the day? That's why that player didn't make a statement, and I'm gonna listen to what he said at the end of the day. Because nobody's 100% Doug, but I'm 99% sure that player caused this deal not to go through. He's the one that caused this his fault that this didn't happen. That's my take on it. Love your show, Doug Gator. Bye.
It's Brian, we've missed you. And I think we've broken through a ceiling here that you agree with me.
That player, I would be pissed at him. I would have threw him under the bus. No, you can't be a GM and throw him under the bus because it'll hurt you in the long run. So, because you might try to get him back. But it was that player fault, Doug. Take care.
Brian, you should see the feedback coming in right now. People can't believe you agree with me. Thank you for calling. We haven't heard from Brian in months. His calls usually start with Doug, and then he annihilates me. You get to know some of the people through the years. That guy annihilates me.
Well, here's why you can say that Scott Harris, you can complain about no Plan B, because I know Brian said that he thinks, in his opinion probably, that Erod said, I'm going, right?
Mm-hmm.
But according to the Dodgers president, we didn't know one way or the other. So they just continued down this path not knowing. They didn't have a definitive answer. They thought, well, we got a bunch of his ex-teammates here. We're contending for a World Series. These are desirable things that he might say yes to. I think maybe the Tigers leaned that he was going to go. Like, all right, we're getting the feeling maybe he does want to go to L.A. He'll waive this, and that's why they kept going down the path of this trade.
And Tom Milliken brought up a great point today that, I mean, the Mets and Rangers swung a deal, came to terms on a Scherzer trade before Scherzer approved the trade. So this does happen. Remember there was a holdup with that because Scherzer had to waive his no trade clause. And he did. But, there are other teams that do similar things. I don't think that's what happened. And the reason I don't think is what happened, that they went down this road hoping he would waive his no trade clause, is because Scott Harris's news conference. Again, it's readily available on YouTube. Go watch it yourself and come away, see if you come away with the same impression that I had, that this is a guy who wants to say a whole lot more, but is willing to take the arrows for a player that didn't want to, for personal reasons, change his mind and didn't want to go to L.A. And he's a human. We all change our minds. We should have sympathy and patience for that. Now, kind of sucks, but it is what it is. 248-539-9797. Josh is next here on 97.1. What's up, Josh?
What's up, Doug? I'll make up for the last caller. You're an idiot. Hey, I wanted to talk about attendance, but first, real quick, let's just point out that you guys are talking about Tigers for over an hour and 12 minutes now. I mean, how often does that happen on this station? The Tigers are interesting.
I got to tell you, I was having this thought yesterday. They're fading right as football season is starting. Between the Tigers, the Twins, and the Indians, or the Gribe, excuse me, we owe them a bit of a thank you because they kept the season interesting right up to the beginning of football, which is far longer than I thought it would be interesting. And I don't think the Tigers are a team filled with overachievers. I think the Twins and Indians made this situationally interesting in that they were close enough to first place. And we talked more Tigers this season than we have for a lot of previous years. And I enjoyed it. It's fun. And I hope that Ja Rule Morosi's report on the morning show a couple days ago is spot on, that this is a Tiger team that thinks they're going to contend for this division next year.
You're right. Get on your hands and knees and thank Scott Harris and Chris Ilitch right now. Do it, Doug.
Thank them before they've done anything in this offseason?
Correct.
No, but I am imploring them to have an aggressive offseason.
Well, Doug, look, the attendance is up this year. I don't know why, but you can really see it because I know you guys just do your little show out front and then go home. But the attendance is up this year, and this is only going to help because what happens? They trade Erod, they trade Foley, they trade Lang, and there's a bunch of guys that you guys do one show. You say, well, this guy we might see in 2 years, and then you're not talking about the Tigers at all. This keeps the Tigers in the conversation. There's no good series coming up. There's a Yankee series, and that's it. So the Tigers, I mean, Chris Ilitch needs people in those seats. And what are fans going to do, show up and boo Erod because he loves Detroit and he wants to stay here? I mean, I'd like to see that. Boo, you love Detroit. How dare you not get traded? I think overall it's a win-win. You know, it keeps the Tigers relevant. The team is interesting, and moving forward, you're going to stay interesting. So I'm happy with it.
I can't. You're right. I mean, how the fans going to react?
Well, I'll say this. I think Erod does like it here in Detroit, but I also feel this is more of anti-LA than love Detroit.
It might be.
I think there's something with LA where he's like, yeah, we ain't going to LA. You know,
right? He's not staying in Detroit for more money either. He's staying in Detroit. He turned down a job in Cali for the same money to stay here in Detroit.
With something to play for out there.
Yeah.
There's nothing to play for out here. And like I said, I think he likes Detroit. But I almost feel this is more anti-LA than love Detroit.
I have to wonder, too, in the back of my mind, well, I'll get to it. Could this be something that we haven't even brought up yet? We'll get to that today at 11:20. Phone calls, feedback, Carson Anderson, 97.1. Doug Harshgater out today. Boy, what a weird day. What a weird day. What a weird story. And yet, we're trying to figure out what actually happened. We're left to speculate quite a bit. It could get cleared up later today when Eduardo Rodriguez speaks with the media. I can look down at any given time and see all kinds of theories that are being sent to us, many of which I don't feel comfortable reading on the air, but very well could be right. It's a guy who left the team last year for some family reasons. It's one of the strange prices of fame is that it feels like this guy's personal issues. I mean, it would suck to have all this play itself out publicly. Now, he's well compensated. We know that there's a downside to the fame as well, and he's it's just leading to a lot of speculation on what happened in our guy's life. And
well, we all know what we heard about possibly what happened last year, right? It was off the field stuff.
Yep.
And now when we hear the president of the Dodgers say, hey, one of the reasons, or if not the main reason this didn't go through is because of family issues or family reasons, who makes the decisions in the family? The adults usually, right?
Yep.
That's mom and dad.
Mm-hmm.
So that's husband and wife.
Mm-hmm.
You get together and you make a decision together.
There's a lot of people pointing the finger, and they're not necessarily pointing at the husband here. And look.
And I don't know what happened. You don't know what happened.
We don't know what happened.
But when family comes up as a reason, those are the two making the decisions in the family.
So in the meantime, too, I wonder how this is going to play itself out. It's funny, Lynn Henning, who's one that's basically reported that Eduardo Rodriguez changed his mind. And there's a lot of dancing around it from other reporters, but he's flat out reported. He changed his mind. He agreed to terms, and he changed his mind. He just tweeted in the last hour, Tigers can't compound yesterday's mishap by signing Eduardo Rodriguez to an extension. He'll be 31 the first week of 2024's regular season. Any extension will be expensive, and for too many years, say goodnight to Rodriguez. I mean, he's kind of right. I have my doubts about whether or not what he's done this year is sustainable at this point in his career. And I've loved it, but unfortunately, due to all these circumstances, I think it's going to be a time in Tiger history that is wholly ungratifying. The net of Eduardo Rodriguez's time in Detroit might be
just this drama.
Yeah, this drama. We got a really good year out of a pitcher in what was probably going to be a forgettable year for the team. Hopefully, it's one of the last years that they're in a rebuild.
So you want him to opt out? Because he doesn't have to. The extension thing is only if he opts out. If he doesn't opt out, he's here.
If it were up to me, and if I were running the Tigers, I would want him to opt out. And, I mean, am I wrong for thinking that at the age of 31 next year, is he really going to keep doing it? The pitchers pitch well into their 30s now. But this is his best season. Okay, so here's the thing I hadn't brought up, and this is a case for him staying here. The Fetter effect. How much did Lorenzen and Rodriguez benefit from operating under the tutelage of the Tiger pitching staff led by Chris Fetter? And I think it's possible. I think that might have something to do with it. And that's the case that can be made for keeping him, is that Fetter has done for Eduardo Rodriguez what Ben Johnson has done for Jeff Goff. Jared Goff. Why did I just call him Jeff?
Did
That's
they finally
sabotaging your own point. All right? Am I wrong? Is it possible that Fetter, unlocked in Lorenzen and Eduardo Rodriguez, was able to bring out their best, and that in the long run, if he does love it here, and he does sign an extension, he does opt in, that the Fetter Rodriguez combination moving forward will benefit this organization. It's possible.
I appreciate the effort, Doug. I appreciate the effort.
Yep.
I think if it's, I think it's a sliver, if anything, though. I think that the big issue is this is an off-the-field decision made by the family to not go to L.A. I mean, he may love Fetter. He may love the Tigers. He may love his teammates here. I think they nixed L.A. for other reasons, and the president of the Dodgers said it as much when he spoke to the agent of Erod, and in the end, it was family reasons. They did not waive the no-trade clause. It is what it is. You move on. We got a ticket text here that says, is this another way to blame Avila for giving Erod this no-trade clause to these teams?
Yes. I mean, look.
Avila strikes again.
The quote from Scott Harris was along the lines of, this organization gave him something that he earned.
Not me.
Not me.
I didn't do this.
Yeah. Okay. So what they get back for Lorenzen? Hao-Yu Lee. Hao-Yu Lee, a second base / middle infield prospect. He's 20 years old. He's a second baseman, third baseman, shortstop. They're going to play him at all those places at West Michigan. He has a chance to be a bat at the big league level, according to Scott Harris. He wants that flexibility to have him play multiple positions in AJ's lineup. So he sounds like, he thinks this guy's going to be here and be here kind of soon. I watched a bunch of YouTube highlights on the guy, and looks like he's got a plus bat. Doesn't hit for a ton of power. Looks fast enough. But he meets the criteria of, long swing through the strike zone, contact hitter. They want guys with good eyes at the plate. We'll see how it plays itself out. But, yesterday I was wanting somebody who ranked higher than Justin Henry Malloy. I think wanting to flip rental pitchers for top 100 prospects is a bit of a pipe dream. So they definitely got somebody who was, he's further away than Justin Henry Malloy, but I think if you look at the ranking, he was higher in the Philly system than Justin Henry Malloy was in the Braves system, but that's not an apples-to-apples comparison. He looks like where he was ranked would have put him ahead of Justin Henry Malloy. So we'll see how it plays itself out. I don't think we should sleep on the acquisition of Eddie Leonard either. He'll play at Toledo. He had a white-hot July for the Dodgers AA system, and they got him for cash. Now, I don't know that they would give him up if they thought that he was, a 22-year-old outfielder was about to flourish, but he did have a white-hot July. And, nothing really lost there, and that's a guy that's one step away from being called up to Detroit. So I'm going to watch that one a little bit. I'm not sure that we should completely sleep on that. That's going to be intriguing. So anyway, 248-539-9797. We promised it. Let's get to it. The best of what Scott Harris had to say yesterday, and you can maybe judge for yourself from the audio, although I do encourage people to go watch the YouTube video. Just punch in Scott Harris press conference today, even though it was yesterday. Should be the first thing that comes up. It's a Zoom call. You judge for yourself what you think happened. It's Carson Anderson. Do that after the show, though. It's Carson Anderson, Open Lines, 97.1. Ken Rosenthal tweeted or wrote a story for The Athletic saying the pressure on buyers is mounting. But we got our new guy in charge in Scott Harris, and all reports say he set a high price for people who want to deal with the Tigers. I mean, they can't go through today without trading, right? So he's got to, at some point, blink. And so who blinks first? Do the buyers concede to his asking price? Or does Scott Harris say, okay, because they've had preliminary talks. You know that he has talked to teams, and, the buyers being teams like Baltimore, the Reds, Atlanta, maybe, Miami, Houston, the Dodgers, whomever. I mean, not everybody's going to be interested in who you have to offer, but somebody is. And they've had preliminary talks and the outlines of deals, and Scott Harris says, I want A and B, and a team says, well, we'll give you B. And then you go, okay, maybe we'll circle back. But you kind of have an outline of what a team is willing to give up for your guys, and you know what you asked for your guys. And so does Scott Harris take this right down to 6 o'clock and eventually pick up the phone and call somebody and say, okay? Or does it go right down to 6 o'clock and that somebody says,
John, you always, in a weird way, have taught me, just let your play do the talking.
Let your pad speak.
Don't worry about the other stuff. And lately, especially this off season, forgetting about the NCAA stuff, just the things coming from the coach of this football team, from Jim Harbaugh, it's not Michigan-like to me. Bragging about how many guys you think are going to be drafted. They have a Georgia drill, talking national championship.
Well, there's no bragging about the Georgia drill. The Georgia drill is because they haven't beaten Georgia or anybody like Georgia.
Okay, well, they only played Georgia once.
Games. Right, all right, but they've lost to Alabama in a bowl game. They've lost to Florida in a bowl game. They've lost to Georgia in a bowl game. They lost to TCU in a bowl game.
Okay.
Oh, they get to the SEC and they're not ready to play. Because that's the counter to that. That's what we're going to hear next. When, they weren't focused on playing Georgia.
And who knows if they're going to play Georgia? Who knows if they make the college football playoffs this year? There's a lot of people that are predicting that they will.
Right. But I don't want to hear Michigan people brag about them right now. I mean,
you don't want to hear Michigan people brag about their team?
Their coach and their players. Just
let's not celebrate.
It's going to be
guys.
very
Let's learn
interesting.
who this guy is first.
Wrong sport.
Post-game news conference with Eduardo Rodriguez. If he talks,
wrong nation.
He will.
This is not a Russian
Maybe
player.
his side of the story or shed some light on what happened.
The Tigers have traded
he doesn't have
Michael
to.
Lorenzen.
I mean, look,
by himself,
it's
no
driven by
package.
personal reasons.
Wait.
He doesn't have to.
Scott Harris was doing something.
Probably be doing
something.
Okay.
His president of baseball operations is solid.
Get what he got.
Saying, hey,
Lorenzen to the Phillies. By himself, no sweetener, no package.
Either saying, I did change my mind.
Is this one for one,
I
David?
told him, I
That's what it
might
looks
change
like.
my mind.
And it's
Or go ahead and deal with him.
baseman
I'll sort of things out on my
from
end.
the
and then say,
Phillies,
what?
their
I just
farm
don't
system. He's not a top 100 player.
But,
He's number 5
for
in their
people didn't
system,
hear
a 20-year-old.
or watch the news conference with Scott Harris. Let's play some of it for you.
He's a Taiwanese second
Start
baseman.
with what happened with Erod.
Your reaction?
Well, looking at it, looks like he's projected to be at the big ball club now in 2 years, 2025. So he can play 3 positions in the infield. I mean,
he's in high A ball, hitting 283 right now, on base 372. We like on base. That's the whole thing here. Look, I didn't think you're getting a top 100 prospect for Lorenzen straight up, so I'm not going to sit here and this is a terrible return. It's fine, I guess. He's a young player, international player. We haven't had enough of those international developed players. Right. He's 20. He's still going to have to develop. Your point, Rico, is he's not going to be here this year.
Okay, so look, let's do some translating here. There were a couple of terms in his contract that eliminated some teams. The no trade clause eliminated some teams, and the opt out. Some teams didn't want a part of it because of the uncertainty with the opt out. So a couple terms of his contract that narrows the field of who could take it, who could take on Eduardo Rodriguez, who can pursue him. We communicated with Eduardo. Translation, he knew we were talking with the Dodgers and didn't tell us no or told us yes. He, quote, ultimately decided, meaning when it came time to make the decision, he said no. Look, he's doing his best to protect. I really believe this. He's doing his best to protect the player. But when you think about it in those terms, doesn't that actually make some sense as to what happened? In what seems like a situation you would never get into. You would never, if a player had told you, I'm not going to L.A., you wouldn't think that a fair and reasonable general manager go, okay, cool, and continue to negotiate with L.A. Now, he might, because it might be the only team that met their terms that was going to give them back what they wanted, and then he hoped he'd changed his mind. It's possible. Both things are possible, but it's why I really look forward to hearing what Eduardo Rodriguez has to say. All right, more. Somebody asked if the Dodgers are in the no-trade clause, why even talk to the Dodgers? Here's Scott Harris. I mean, there you go. There is Scott Harris, I think, defending the player and also saying this organization gave him the right. He didn't say I gave him the right. All right, so Jeff Seidel at the end asked the point-blank question, and you'll hear it. How do you seriously get down this far down the road with a team that he won't go to? And this is where I was really reading into the nonverbals, but this includes the question, Scott Harris yesterday, how do you get that far down? And the guy says no. There you go. There you go. Now, you can draw your own conclusions. But, and it isn't a great moment, but I really feel like the player changed his mind. Player changed his mind. All right, so they also didn't trade any relievers, which I find also to be a little bit, I'm maybe in some ways more disturbing because those guys didn't hold the control that Eduardo Rodriguez held. And yet none of those guys got dealt either. Stoney asked him a question, and he'll hear the question about whether or not he overvalued the pieces he had in the trade market, considering they only made one trade. And here was the exchange. Yeah, so two things there. One is he says, I'm not sure it's fair. And then at the end, he says, I think it's a fair question. But he said we saw eye to eye on the players we wanted to move. So maybe they just didn't want to move the relief arms. Now that I've heard that again, I wonder if that's the implied message from that soundbite. All right, final thing from Scott Harris. Overall, is this a disappointing trade deadline? Here's the Tiger president of baseball ops. Okay, so there you go. That's some of what Scott Harris told the media yesterday in a Zoom call following the trade deadline. 248-539-9797. Let's get back to the people. We go to Mike. You're on 97.1 The Ticket. What's up, Mike?
Hey, good morning, Doug. How are you today?
Doing good. Thank you for calling.
I think, I don't know. I think maybe we should not look at it as such a, maybe he just likes it here. Maybe he just doesn't want to move across country. You know, you could blame Avila. I blame Avila more than I do Harris for having such a contract that gives the player so much control. You can't blame a man that got a contract that, you know, those things are in his contract. He has a right to do that. Now, him being misleading, I don't know if I'm a fan of that, but you never know. He might like it here because the way the Tigers handled his absence last year and everything. So, I mean, I don't know. I'm not that upset about it for a prospect that may or may not work out. What I'm more upset about is how come those are the only two players that anybody wanted? Why wasn't there more guys available? Why couldn't they traded some of these other guys? You know, because some of them should have been traded.
Yeah. When you said
the market,
when you said being misleading, you mean him sort of being vague about what happened?
No, Erod. If he told him that he was going to be, or he would accept the deal, and then he didn't, then yes, that would have. But I just feel like personally, I don't feel like it's the end of the world. How come not one other player was in trade talks? They couldn't get rid of some of these guys.
Yeah, I find that curious as well. In some ways, as curious. I thought for sure that they would be interested in moving, and they would move relievers, and they didn't. I don't know why that didn't happen. But he said, I mean, that last soundbite we played, and it was the first time I noticed, he said the two players we were interested in moving, we agreed to terms with other teams. Only one of them went through, but he did say the two players. So maybe that's the implied message. We didn't want to trade any relievers. Open lines. We'll get to more of your phone calls. Don't forget, Tiger Baseball coming up today at 12:35. Gator out. Carson Anderson, 97.1 The Ticket. Hey, plans for the weekend? Make sure you're free Saturday night for Fight Night at Twin Peaks. Get ready for war as two of the combat sports biggest stars meet as boxing and media superstar Jake Paul takes on former UFC and MMA icon Nate Diaz. With so much animosity between these two fighters, fans should see an explosive spectacle. Jake has not lost to a UFC star to date, and Nate is looking to end that run. Make sure you get in early for your front row seat to all the action. Your favorite Twin Peaks girls can't wait to serve up all your favorites, from the chilling 29-degree drafts to the hand-breaded and cooked-to-order boneless wings, sauced up with all your favorite flavors. Have you tried the new hand-cut New York strip or thin, crispy flatbreads? Check them out. Saturday night is sure to be a knockout, and don't miss out. If you're a fan of Twin Peaks, sign up for the E-Club to stay up to date on all things Twin Peaks and score free stuff. Signing up is easy. Just visit twinpeaksrestaurant.com/peaks-club to get started today. All right, so football tomorrow, huh? Hall of Fame game? All right, let's go. Would absolutely I will absolutely be sitting in front of the TV tomorrow night watching football. This is the last day without a football game. That's not true. There'll be days after that without a football game, but we do get football tomorrow.
You know, Ken Rosenthal,
which is awesome.
Tweeted or
do
wrote
you
a
remember
story
yesterday
for
we
the
took
Athletic saying the
predictions?
pressure on buyers is mounting. But we got our new
those
guy in
predictions
charge,
here
and
as to
Scott
who would be
Harris,
the
and our
first Tiger
reports say
traded and
he
what
set a
time it would
high
go down.
price.
Anyone get
for
close
people who
or
want to
get it
deal
right?
with the Tigers.
Pretty close. We'll get to that at
I mean,
12:02.
they can't
But
go
football
through today
tomorrow, huh?
without trading.
Yeah,
right?
Zach Wilson,
so he's
Gators
got
boys gonna
to,
be starting.
at some point.
Oh,
blink.
is he?
Yeah. Well, Rodgers ain't gonna
And
play.
so who blinks first?
I don't think Watson's gonna play
Do
either.
the buyers
but Zach
concede
Wilson
to
will
his
be out
asking
there.
price?
Mm-hmm.
Or does
I will
does Scott Harris say,
I'll be
okay,
watching.
because you know they've had preliminary talks.
Probably too
You know that
invested
he has
in a
talked
game
to
that means
teams,
absolutely
and,
nothing.
You know, the buyers
Yeah, but it's
being
live
teams
action
like Baltimore,
football.
the Reds, Atlanta, maybe Miami,
action
Houston,
football.
the Dodgers, whomever. I mean, not everybody's going to be interested in who you have to offer, but somebody is.
248-539-9797. Phone calls, feedback. Carson Anderson, Gator out today. Let's get to some of the feedback that's come in. I got a lot of catching up to do. Sorry. Here we go. If Erod was in agreement and changed his mind at the last minute, you can absolutely blame him. Well, Scott Harris doesn't want people to. An unnamed texter, no, but when I change my mind, I don't leave someone out there on the hook for my actions. So that's from an unnamed texter as well. Erod's scheduled to speak today. Robin Cleveland says Erod will be shut down in a few weeks, especially if they feel he's opting out. Unnamed texter, why would Scott not have a backup plan, especially going down to the final few hours with a situation like Erod? It's a valid question. Also from an unnamed texter. He did say we weren't just going to give him away for pieces that we didn't think could help us. And I'm like, isn't that better than nothing? And then I started thinking about what if the best offer had some free swinging poor man's Javi Baez at the A level? That is, he's a prospect with some ability and some respect, but he's trending to be a free swinging out of the strike zone kind of guy. Do we really want that? Now, I don't know what else he had on the table. He did say, if you heard that soundbite we played, that a couple of terms really narrowed the field of teams that would take him. Those terms are obviously no trade clause, where, the team they eventually agreed to terms with, it got nixed because of that. And the opt-out, I think the uncertainty with the opt-out didn't help. From Scott in Garden City, I just don't understand how there was not any other teams looking for a left-handed starting pitcher. I like Rodriguez, but when he opts out at the end of the year, we'll have gotten a year and a half of nothing and nothing in return. Yeah. Yep. I hear you. That's the part about this that really sucks.
That's the fear.
Yep.
If you want him back, but if you don't want him back, Doug,
which
you're kind of
I
like,
kind of don't. It sucks because you felt like you should have got something for him. I felt like Detroit should have got something for him, and they were poised to. Can we play that first soundbite again, where he said, which I think is Eduardo Rodriguez or Harris won? Can we play it again? Because I think I want to read between the lines here a little bit. Let's hear it again. Okay, you can stop it there. That might be right there. It was a very narrow field of teams that were willing to take him on because of the opt-out and because of the no trade clause. He said at the beginning, he acknowledges his performance, everybody would want him. But the uncertainty with the opt-out and the no trade clause, look, we're translating here, but that's what I hear. Those are the dots I'm connecting.
Yeah, it sounds like this was not an easy thing to get done, but as a fan or a person who's not an expert, you say, we criticize Al Avila. Make the market then, right?
Yeah.
And then so don't we do the same thing with Scott Harris?
Yeah,
Don't you
a
sit
little bit.
back? I'm not in a position to do what he does, but also I'm not the one getting paid. I don't have the title that he does. And so do you have to go out there and make the market, or because starting pitching was needed, and he's one of the best starting pitchers that was available. Now, unfortunately, he's right though. There were contractual, things that kept him from talking to some teams, but he still talked to one of those teams.
He did
and
talk
then
to
the
one of those
Dodgers,
teams.
right?
Yep.
And it just didn't happen.
All right, more feedback to the Carson Anderson inbox. Again, you can text us at 248-539-9797. Scott Harris is just the next in line of Detroit GMs who are reactive and not proactive when dealing with the trade deadline. I can't recall a single Detroit GM who went out and set the market. That's from Will. At a trade deadline. I mean, Yzerman's done some pretty good things at the trade deadline. So I can respect, he basically got the what was needed to go out and do what they did in the draft. I mean, what they did at the trade deadline probably created the flexibility to go get Alex DeBrincat, to be honest with you, over the last couple of years. But
I don't know what's going to happen, but Erod, if he does, there might be a way he doesn't opt out. Okay? And
Yep.
this may not be for you, but for all the people that want Erod back, he currently has a no trade clause to 10 teams. Maybe he can't get that clause in his next contract with a new team. If he wants a no trade clause, and at least with those 10 teams, he's got to opt back in, because if he opts out, it's a clean slate completely. And the Tigers and Scott Harris, who didn't give him that trade clause in the first place, might go, hey, we want you back, but we're not giving you a no trade clause.
Yeah.
I might give you more money, but I'm not giving you a no trade clause.
Yeah.
So if I want to ship you to L.A. next year, I might do that.
Mhm.
Now, he wouldn't say that at the table, but you know what I mean.
He might.
And so if Erod opts out and goes to, the Red Sox, back to the Red Sox, whoever, those teams might not give him that no trade clause. Right now, he has some power. Is he willing to give up that power and test the market? Because clearly he didn't want to go to L.A.
yeah, that's pretty damn clear. Just saw this from Dan Dickerson, the Tiger play-by-play voice. He tweets out, AJ on the strangeness of trade deadline day on not trading Erod and what he means when he talks about the vibe being different for his pitchers now that Lorenzen is gone. Tigers wrap-up series of Pirates broadcast starts at 12:10. So you'll hear AJ Hinch's take on all this coming up. Tiger pregame show, which starts at 12:10 today. 248-539-9797. Matt is next. What's up, Matt?
Hey, Doug. I hope you enjoyed your vacation.
I did. Thank you for asking.
Okay, this city is going through a double talk, and it needs to be discussed. When we traded Verlander through waivers, we got pretty much garbage back. We got Candy. I think we got him. We got Jake Rogers. We got Franklin Perez, so on and so forth.
It was Daz Cameron, not Candy, but Daz Cameron, yes.
So we basically took whatever we could get for Verlander, and it's been kind of universally panned by the city that we gave Verlander for peanuts, and now we have nothing to show for it. Well, this is the other side of that exact same coin. We didn't give a guy up for peanuts. Now we're playing with him, so why are we complaining again? It just seems like either way, whether we did or didn't trade him, we're getting the same handful of people complaining like there was nothing we could have done right. We could have traded him for Shohei, and somebody would have found a reason why this wasn't a good trade.
I suspect that's a bit of an exaggeration. but I,
you know what I'm saying? Like, we literally had this whole thing about why do we have nothing. We only have Jake Rogers, who's a 4A player at best, for Verlander. Let's look back 4 years later on the trade, yada, yada, yada.
Yep.
Well, this is the other side. We keep Verlander for the last 4 years, and this is what's going on. So I guess the Twitter question is, which one do you, if you had to take one, do you take what you got with Verlander where you sold him for pennies, or you keep a guy you don't sell for pennies? Which way do you go? Because I feel like it's the same trade. Like, it's one or the other.
He he didn't take nothing. He refused to take nothing, and he said he wasn't going to take players that they didn't think could help him, which some people say would be better than nothing. He didn't believe that. Jim is next here on 97.1 The Ticket. What's up, Jim?
Hi, how you guys doing? Love the show.
Thank you.
hey, everybody's putting it, that Eduardo likes the town or not likes the town. This screams to me of, hey, the agent called. We got a foursome going out on Saturday. You want to be in the foursome? Sure, yeah. No, I'm definitely in. I'm definitely in, guys. I want to go. Calls it back an hour later and says, the wife said no. Now, I don't know what his family situation. I know he had some problems last year. I don't know what his situation is, but this screams to me of, I'm sorry, guys. I can't go.
Yeah, in some ways, it's a great analogy.
That's hilarious.
Because you know what, Jim? I think you just created a situation that every single married guy has been in at one point or another is, I'm in. And then you have to call back and go, oh, the wife had other plans.
Family reasons, Doug. You don't even say wife. You just say family reasons. Because this actually happened to me a few years ago. A buddy and we were planning a trip to Vegas.
Yeah.
And I'm like, we're all like, you're in, right? He's like, I'm in. Count me in. Just write my name in bold marker. I'm in.
Right.
Like a week or two up to did you book yet? Yeah, I'm out, guys. Like, what? Family reasons.
All right, I mentioned it a while ago. We did have some people come very close on the prediction yesterday. We did just for fun. We predicted who would be the first Detroit Tiger traded and what time will it go down. Some people came very close. We'll get to that today and let you know who won at 12:02. Tiger Baseball 1210 97.1. All right, so here's some of the predictions we got. Charles in a truck. Oh, I will say the first report of the trade, I screenshotted it, came from Ja Rule Morosi at 3:25. Tigers are close to trading Michael Lorenzen to Phillies. That was at 3:25. Charles in a truck at 3:48, or texted his prediction. Lorenzen at 3:48. Oh, but Tom in Brighton, Lorenzen at 3:47. But the closest came from Rob in Plymouth. Michael Lorenzen at 3:37. He was 12 minutes off. The first Tiger to be traded, 12 minutes off. Derek in Vegas came close. Lorenzen to Baltimore at 2 p.m. First domino to fall. So that was 25 minutes away. No, it was later than that because it was an hour. That was an hour and 25. Here, Michael Lorenzen at 3:05. Dave at D'Amato's. So that was 20 minutes away, but still the 12 minutes, Rob in Plymouth closer to the 3:25. So, Tiger baseball coming up today at 12:10. We have dissected a crazy story, the kind of thing you just almost never see. And it took over the MLB network when the trade deadline hit. After barely talking about the Tigers, trade deadline comes and goes. Eduardo Rodriguez doesn't get traded, and that dominated the talk nationally. How the heck did this happen? Well, we've done a lot of speculation. Let's get back to your open line calls. We've done a lot of connecting of the dots. We may get some clarity later today after Eduardo Rodriguez starts, and we suspect that he will provide at least a little bit of insight. Let's go to Paul. You're on 97.1 The Ticket. Hi, Paul.
Hey, Doug. Thanks for taking the call.
Sure.
Two thoughts on this. First one is I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that the guy changed his mind and decided to stay. I mean, he said 2 weeks ago he was happy with the contract and he really liked being in Detroit. And, Harris said in his thing, hey, if the worst thing that comes out of this is that we have one of the best left-handed pitchers in baseball that stays and pitches every fifth day. So there's always still the possibility that this guy does not opt out and he chooses to stay. And if he does that, then this all would make sense. Now, that said, if he intends to opt out, and after what the Tigers went through with him last year and allowing him to leave and take care of his family issues and basically not, giving him any grief over it, if he nixes that trade and leaves us, I got to tell you, he's the villain in this, him or his wife, whoever's the root cause of it. But I don't think it's a foregone conclusion that the guy's leaving.
Yeah.
It wouldn't shock me if he stays. Would not shock me at all.
So I don't want him to, because at 30, I'm suspicious that this season is kind of a one-off and not necessarily the light going on at this point in his career and him turning into a dominant starting left-handed pitcher. He's been a good one, but not as good as this year. But that's dismissing the Federer effect, and I think that is something that is. I mean, Lorenzen cited it, and I think he could be having a real positive impact on locking some stuff that some of these Tiger pitchers have.
Well, what I would say though is that that's a completely different subject.
Yes.
If we're talking about simply who's to blame and what caused this, whether we want him to stay or not, if the guy simply chose that he likes the contract and he likes the city and that's why he nixed it and that's why he stayed, well, then it came from a good place because he wants to stay.
Yep.
If he nixes the deal and leaves, then that's a POS move, in my opinion.
It'll be hard to sort of do anything but what you did is just blame him, and that hasn't happened yet. But that will feel like he really screwed over. Now, what the Tigers did with him last year, when people say, and you said stood by him, they placed him on a list where he didn't get paid. So,
well, I mean, how could you pay him after what he was doing?
Right, but I'm not sure. He sees it as standing by him.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I'm not saying that the Tigers did anything wrong or they did what they wanted to do, what they were rightfully able to do, but. Yeah, I wouldn't consider that standing by him necessarily. They put him on the list. They didn't pay him. They put him on. They couldn't get in contact with him, which I get. Hey, man, this guy's gone. We can't reach him. We're going to put him on this list where we're not going to pay him.
It's not like they were going to release him or trade him. I don't know that they had really.
But that's not really, quote unquote, standing by him.
Yeah. I thought that too at first, but then when I read that the Major League rules say when you put him on that list, you don't get paid. I don't know what other choice they had,
But Erod has said since then he does enjoy it here and he likes it here. So
he's said that pretty consistently. Yeah. 248-539-9797. Larry is next. Hi, Larry.
Hey, how you doing, Doug?
What's up?
How you doing, King?
Very good, Larry.
Okay, good. You know what? I looked for stuff. You know what? This was weird yesterday, okay? But I looked for stuff that's maybe out of the box a little bit, and I'm thinking, what if he does want to opt out? Okay, but and he knows if he went out there to that division, you think his stock would drop because he's in this division here. He's gonna get probably better starts or look better. You know what I'm saying?
Yep, I know exactly.
And
what
with money coming up.
Yep. Certainly possible.
You know what? He might not look that good down there when you're playing all those other teams.
Certainly possible. Certainly possible.
You know what? It was just a thought. Thinking, you know what? I like the guy. If we keep him, he's okay. He's good. If you look down our rotation, we're okay. We're going to get Casey Mize back, maybe Spencer Turnbull, but he's, you know what? It just may be something he looked down the road. He says, you know what? If I want to opt out, I don't want to go and lose 6 games down there in that.
Well, yeah, he's going to probably look better playing the Tiger schedule and the Dodger schedule, but I don't think athletes operate that way. I hear what you're saying, but I don't think athletes typically go, I'm going to fail there. I don't want that chance. They so many of them have supreme confidence. It's possible, but I doubt it.
Yeah, I'm with you, Doug. These guys are human, like we spoke before, but most of these guys are ultra competitive. They're very good at what they do. They embrace that, and I don't think they don't let that creep into their mind. Like, they're not scared like that. It's always possible because everyone's different, but majority, no.
Freddie writes in, if the scenario we painted out, that Eduardo changed his mind, he writes, if true, Eduardo screwed Harris, I now have a ton of respect for Harris for taking the so-called bullets and making himself look bad. I think if you watch that YouTube news conference, the Zoom call yesterday with the media, you might understand or see why I think that's the case. He looked like he had a lot more to say, and he was biting his tongue. And he kind of said it without saying it. I did a lot of reading between the lines, and so it's just my interpretation. But that was the way I took it. All right, AJ Hinch, Tiger manager, will get his 2 cents during Tiger Baseball, which is next here on 97.1 The Ticket.
Curveball hit hard out in the left field. It's in there for a base hit. Hart may have a shot at Brock. Here comes the throw. John Ward lets it go, and he runs over 300. They got it.
The crack of the bat.
There's a swing, and there's another drive to left. It's deep, and this one is gone. The second home run by Travel. Whitaker scores.
The roar of the crowd.
Into a mob scene at home. Walk-off winner.
It's unbelievable. It's magic here in this ballpark.
The love of your team.
You Tiger fans are the greatest fans of all. No question about that.
A 123-year tradition continues. This is Detroit Tigers Baseball on the Detroit Tigers Radio Network. Brought to you by Blue Cross Blue Shield of Michigan, committed to providing members access to care they need whenever and wherever they need it. From the Metro Detroit Buick GMC Dealers broadcast booth, let's join the voices of Tigers Baseball, Dan Dickerson and Bobby Scales.
Hello again, everyone. We're getting ready to wrap up this 2-game set. Tigers and Pittsburgh Pirates. A 4-1 win for the Pirates yesterday. Trade deadline day, Bobby, and it just felt like that was kind of hanging over this team. In the performance we saw last night, there just wasn't much there. I think it's a good thing that the trade deadline has passed and the Tigers now can get ready and focus on the next 2 months.
Without question, there's significant markers throughout the course of the year. Right, wrong, or indifferent, the trade deadline is one of those things. It's over. So now you pick up, you move forward, you assess where you are, and you finish the rest of the year.
Tigers today will send Eduardo Rodriguez to the mound because he was not traded away. Osvaldo Bido gets the start for the Pittsburgh Pirates. Stay with us. Our conversation with manager A.J. Hinch about all that went on yesterday coming up after this on the Detroit Tigers Radio Network.
Michigan, give the PointsBet Online Casino